Chapter 981, Eccentric Old Man, Eccentric Old Man. Where is he at? Bring me over to meet him. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Since there was someone who had the sepulchre flower, all he had to do was to purchase it. There was no need for him to hesitate at all. Hearing those words, Hu Yunsheng smiled bitterly. It isn't that easy. The medicinal herbs in his possession are not for sale. It is impossible to purchase them no matter how much money one had. On top of that, the eccentric old man has a very bad temper as well. There was once which the Jingyuan city lord required a rare medicinal herb urgently, so he prepared a great amount of spirit stones that would suffice to buy 3 of that medicinal herbs at market price. Yet he was thrown out the door before he could even speak a word. The city lord was thrown out. Is the eccentric old man very powerful? Zhang Xian frowned. The city lord of Jingyuan city had to be at least a Saint One Dan cultivator at the very minimum. Yet, for the other party to throw him out the door, it seemed like the eccentric old man wasn't going to be an easy person to deal with. His cultivation is on the same level as me, Saint One Dan pinnacle. However, he has a Saint Two Dan tamed beast with him. Hu Yunsheng replied. He is a beast tamer. Zhang Xian frowned. Even taming a saint beast weaker than one was already arduously difficult, but the eccentric old man was actually able to tame a Saint Two Dan beast despite only possessing a cultivation of Saint One Dan. That was truly an impressive feat. One must know that no one, not even school head Mo, in the Master Teacher Academy had managed to achieve this feat. Thus, Zhang Xian couldn't help but be bewildered as to why a talented figure like the other party would choose to reside at the remote Jingyuan city. I am not too sure either, but that tamed beast obeys every single one of his words. If anyone tries to cause trouble, it would kick them out immediately. Even I dare not do anything to it. Hu Yunsheng said. After chatting for a while longer, Zhang Xian couldn't help but shake his head. Through Hu Yunsheng's words, it could be seen that the eccentric old man was indeed a rather peculiar person. The eccentric old man was indubitably a huge hoarder of valuable artifacts and medicinal herbs. Typically speaking, hoarders accumulated their goods in weight for a hike in the market price so that they could profit off their collection. However, putting aside selling his collection, the eccentric old man didn't even allow guests to enter his residence. Bring me over to take a look. Regardless of how eccentric that fellow was, Zhang Xian knew he would need to meet him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have anything to lure the poison masters in. In the 10 days' flight to Jingyuan city, Wei Ruyan remained unconscious throughout the entire duration. This went to say that her condition was steadily declining, and her life would be in grave danger if she wasn't treated soon. Time wasn't on their side, so Zhang Xian had to grasp onto everything there was. You still intend to look for him? Hu Yunsheng's face turned bitter. There is no way he will let us through the doors of his residence, and he might even send his tamed beast after us. The person before him had just arrived at Jingyuan city, so it was only natural that he knew not of how fearsome the eccentric old man was. On the other hand, he had experienced it with his own body. A person whom even the city lord was helpless before, what could they possibly do? Due to the many valuable artifacts and medicinal herbs that the eccentric old man possessed, he had tried to visit the other party to negotiate with him many times, but he would be thrown out each time without fail. It's fine, I know what I am doing. Zhang Xian replied. His current identity was that of a poison master and not a master teacher. He didn't need to abide by the troublesome rules that master teachers had to follow. When there is a will, there is a way. There was bound to be a way which he could obtain the sepulchre flower from the other party. All right then. Seeing that the other party had his mind made up, Hu Yunsheng knew that it was impossible for him to convince the other party otherwise. His life was still in the other party's hand, so he could only agree to it. Just as the both of them walked out of the room, Zhu Shao also happened to be seen walking towards them. At the moment that Zhu Shao saw the both of them, he couldn't help but notice that not only was the middle-aged man was still alive, his boss was even walking subserviently behind the middle-aged boss. In that instant, disbelief covered his entire face. However, there was no way Hu Yunsheng could explain anything to Zhu Xiao at this moment, so he quickly instructed Zhu Xiao to look after Cloud Quarter before leading Zhang Xian to the eccentric old man's residence. Had he not been poisoned, he could consider hinting Zhu Xiao to gather a few men and hide in the surroundings to prepare an ambush on Zhang Xian. However, as long as he remained afflicted with the poison, he dared not to do so. Otherwise, he could very well die before making a move. Furthermore, even if an ambush was carried out, he had a feeling that his subordinates would be the one who would be lying on the ground at the end of it, poisoned. If poison masters could be killed that easily, the lineage of the poison hall wouldn't have persevered for so long. The residence of the eccentric old man was located not too far from Inkstone Quarter. It took only a brief walk before an average-sized residence came into sight. The entrance doors were tightly shut, and there was a plaque which stated that no guests were welcomed in the residence. The surroundings were cold and desolate, not a single guard was in sight. There was no way one could tell that it was the home of an esteemed Saint Realm expert just by looking at it. Knock on the door. Walking up, Zhang Xian glanced at Hu Yunsheng and commanded. We are just going to knock on the door like that? Are you sure there is no need to prepare a visiting scroll? Hu Yunsheng was taken aback. It was manners to present a visiting scroll ahead of one's visit to indicate one's identity and reason for the visit. Would they really be able to enter just by knocking like that? The other party was already a hot-tempered man. If they were to act so discourteously on top of that, wouldn't that just place them in a worse position? Just knock on the door. Instead of replying, Zhang Xian urged Hu Yunsheng on with a smile. Be it whether the other party was eccentric or not, as long as he was human, he was bound to have desires and goals. As long as that was the case, he was confident that he would be able to persuade the other party to sell the medicinal herb to him. All right then. Seeing that Zhang Xian wasn't listening to his advice, Hu Yunsheng shook his head as he walked up to the door and knocked on it. Dong 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 dong. The knocking sounds were particularly resounding in the quiet streets. Jiaya. Before the doors to the eccentric old man's residence opened, the doors to the residence opposite to it opened instead. Following which, an old man and a servant walked out. There is no point knocking. The owner of that residence won't meet with you. Glancing at the duo, the old man advised. Won't meet with us? Zhang Xian frowned. Are you a subordinate of the eccentric old man? Of course not. I am just an admirer of his. The old man waved his hands casually. I see. Continue knocking. Hearing that the old man had nothing to do with the eccentric old man, Zhang Xian turned around and commanded Hu Yunsheng. You. Seeing how that fellow refused to listen to his advice, the old man frowned in displeasure. The face of the servant beside him also turned livid in anger. He walked up and glared at Zhang Xian furiously. How dare you speak to our old master like that? Do you know who he is? Zhang Xian took a brief glance at the servant before turning his gaze away impassively, paying no heed to the other party at all. Who cares who your old master is? Do you know who I am? I am just afraid that your heart might not be able to take the blow. Dong dong dong. The knocking continued. Not expecting to be ignored, the servant's complexion turned awful. Our old master is the head of the physician guild, Master Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian. Zhang Xian shook his head and said, never heard of him before. Continue knocking. Yes. Hu Yunsheng's lips twitched. He didn't have much interaction with Zhou Xian in the past, so he only felt that the other party looked familiar. However, upon hearing the introduction, it immediately came back to him. The head of the physician guild, even the city lord, would treat him with utmost respect, not daring to offend him in the slightest. Yet, this fellow actually disregarded him altogether. Just the thought of it left him frenzied. However, with his life in the other party's hand, he could only feign ignorance and continue knocking on the doors. On the other hand, both the servant and Zhou Xian were leaping with anger. As the guild leader of the Jingyuan City Physician Guild, Zhou Xian's standing was comparable to the city lord. After all humans would eventually be wounded or fall ill at some point in their life. As such, while there were cultivators who dared to offend the leaders of the other guilds, there were none who were willing to get on Zhou Xian's bad side. Yet, this fellow actually disregarded Zhou Xian, treating him as if he was air. Didn't you hear my words? Our old master is a 6-star physician, the servant said through gritted teeth. I heard your words loud and clear. But the person I am looking for is the eccentric old man, not your old master. Zhang Xian shook his head. So what if the other party was a 6-star physician? 3 months ago, a vice school head of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, who was a 6-star pinnacle physician as well, attempted to take advantage of him, only to be nearly played to his death. Given so, why should he have to fear the person before him? You. The servant nearly fainted from anger. 6-star physicians were esteemed individuals who were respected no matter where they went, and yet, this fellow actually didn't care at all? Damn it! Did they not know what price they would have to pay for offending a physician? Just as the servant was about to say something more, Master Zhou Xian suddenly raised his hand to stop him before walking forward. This friend over here, I have no idea who you are, and it doesn't matter you know my identity or not. However, senior eccentric old man is unwilling to meet any guests, so there is no point for you to continue knocking. As the head of the Physician Guild, Master Zhou Xian had met plenty of people in his time. Considering how the other party was able to remain composed even after learning his identity, it could only mean that the other party came from an exceptional background. Thus, instead of bellowing at the other party like how his servant did, he chose to take on a persuasive tone. Unwilling to meet any guests? That's right. Senior eccentric old man is a hot-tempered person, and he doesn't like to be disturbed. Even our city lord had to send in several visiting scrolls before paying a visit himself. Just a word of advice, you will fare better leaving for the time being and have someone deliver your visiting scroll in first. Otherwise, you will just incur the other party's ire by continue knocking here. Master Zhou Xian said. What he said was true. The eccentric old man was a person who valued peace and didn't like to be disturbed. Even after seeking an audience for so many days, he still wasn't able to meet the eccentric old man. To walk straight up to the doors without even preparing anything, wasn't the other party just asking to be shut out completely? I see. Zhang Xian frowned before shaking his head in frustration. Since that is the case. Zhou Xian thought that after hearing his piece, the other party would turn around and back down for the moment to prepare his visiting scroll. Yet, the next few words he heard nearly left him keeling over. Hu Yunsheng, knock the door down. Zhang Xian waved his hand, as if he was just doing something insignificant. Knock the door down. Hu Yunsheng's lips twitched, and he nearly fainted on the spot. That's right. Zhang Xian shot a glance at Hu Yunsheng, and seeing the fear in the other party's eyes, he sighed deeply. Forget it, I will do it myself. Knowing that Hu Yunsheng dared not provoke the eccentric old man, Zhang Xian walked up to the door himself and thrust his fist forcefully against it. Boom! How could a wooden door possibly be able to withstand his tremendous might? In just a mere moment, countless wooden fragments and splinters flew into the residence. The buzz from the previous explosion lingered in the air as a cloud of dust slowly drifted down. Seeing the lack of hesitation in the other party's actions, a shiver ran through Zhou Xian's body, and he nearly blacked out. I told you that the eccentric old man doesn't like to be disturbed, and yet, you knocked down the other party's door. Overwhelmed with anger, Zhou Xian's breathing hastened to the point that he could hardly catch his breath. Where in this world did this fool come from? Initially, he also didn't pay much attention to the eccentric old man, thinking that the other party was just putting on airs. A personal visit from the Physician Guild should have other party rushing out to welcome him. But there was one occasion which he chanced on the other party treating a patient that changed his view of the other party entirely. He realized that the other party possessed a mastery in the way of medicine that was far beyond his. In other words, the eccentric old man was likely to be either a 6-star pinnacle or a 7-star physician. It was also for this reason that he rented the residence opposite to the old eccentric man's and delivered a visiting scroll over every single day. He hoped that he would be able to win the other party's favor and learn a hand or two from him. This was also why he ran out upon hearing that someone knocking on the doors of the eccentric old man's residence. He was hoping that he could possibly leave a good impression with the other party through this. But he had already said all that should be said, so why was this fellow so foolish? To knock down the other party's door with a single fist, what were they to do now? No doubt about it, the eccentric old man was bound to be fuming. Look, isn't the problem settled now? All right, let's enter. Ignoring the frenzied Zhou Xian, Zhang Xian waved his hands casually and walked in. Chapter 982, Green spittle poison. The residence wasn't too big, but an astounding amount of spiritual energy had gathered in the area. With just a glance, Zhang Xian could tell that there was a spirit-gathering formation set up in the area. It was of a fairly high grade 6 pinnacle at the minimum. Due to the presence of the spirit-gathering formation, the spiritual energy in the residence was several times more concentrated than that outside. The entire courtyard was densely filled with rare medicinal herbs, those which one would hardly see on the market. Not bad. Sweeping a glance at the surroundings, Zhang Xian saw at least 10 stalks of saint herbs, and his eyes lit up in amazement. Even Yu Su didn't have that many saint herbs in his garden back then. Jia. While Zhang Xian was still looking around, the doors to one of the rooms opened, and a haggard-looking old man appeared. Looking at Zhang Xian and the others, he bellowed, "Who let you all in? How brazen!" He was fuming mad. After all, there wasn't a person in the world who wouldn't be furious when someone knocked down his door and barged into his residence. Could there be an even more arrogant act than that? Senior, he was the one who forcefully charged in here. I didn't think that he... Seeing that the eccentric old man was shaking with rage, Zhou Xian hurriedly explained with quivering lips. He mustn't lose the good impression he had accrued with great difficulty due to this. Blue Tigress Beast, send our guests out. Paying no heed to what Zhou Xian was saying, the eccentric old man commanded forcefully. Hula. Right after those words were spoken, a 5 meters long saint beast emerged from the room by the side, and every step taken caused the ground to tremor violently. Blue Tigress Beast, a Saint 2 Dan primary stage saint beast. Its fighting prowess was, at the very least, on par with the Byzantium Helios beast. The incredible presence it commanded was pressurizing, leaving the faces of those standing before it paling and their bodies trembling. This was especially so for Hu Yunsheng. In his previous visits to this residence, he had been viciously pummeled by that huge fellow. Meeting the other party once more, he couldn't help but feel an innate fear towards it. On the other hand, Zhou Xian subconsciously took several steps back. He knew that there was no way he could match a saint beast of such strength with his current cultivation realm. Do you want to leave by yourself, or do you want me to reduce you to a lifeless corpse and toss you out? The Blue Tigress Beast glared at Zhang Xian with its large, menacing eyes. In face of the threat, Zhang Xian chuckled softly and replied, "What if I choose neither of the options? Why are you wasting your breath? Toss him out." Waving his hands impatiently, the eccentric old man turned around and started walking back into his room. He had absolute trust in his tamed beast's capability, so he didn't think that there was a need for him to remain on the scene. Right after he turned his back around, he heard the furious roaring of the Blue Tigress Beast. Following which, a powerful shockwave burst into the surroundings, leaving the ground shaking violently. An instant later, the sound of something being struck up into the sky echoed in the air. Boom! That something landed heavily on the ground, raising a cloud of dust in the courtyard. Humph, know your place. The eccentric old man nodded in satisfaction as he continued walking away. The Blue Tigress Beast had always been known for its ferocity. Just by hearing the sounds, he could tell that that arrogant fellow had been floored. Forget it, there is no need to go too far. It'll suffice to teach him a lesson, don't kill him by axe. Shaking his hands, the eccentric old man turned around. Even though he didn't really care for the other party, a person who dared to barge into his residence couldn't possibly be of low standing. As a person who valued his peace, he didn't cause more trouble out of this matter than it was worth. However, before he could finish his words, the sight he saw left him body frozen in shock. It took a long time before he was able to utter any words at all. What is going? The scene before him was completely different from the one he had imagined. The blue tigress beast should have been teaching the other party a lesson, but at this moment, it was lying right in front of the middle-aged man, licking the other party's palm fawningly, reminiscent of a loyal dog. What in the world is with this ridiculous sight before me? I told you to toss him out, not to please him. Are you my tamed beast or his? Uncomprehending of the situation before him, he turned his gaze to Zhou Xian and the others, only to see the three of them completely dumbfounded as well. Unable to take it any longer, the eccentric old man roared, "Blue tigress beast, what are you doing?" This was truly unacceptable. For his own tamed beast to defy his orders and please another man instead, he would become a huge laughingstock should this matter be known to the public. This was too humiliating. Master, I. The blue tigress beast turned around to face his master, but not knowing how it should explain the situation, it scratched its head with its massive paws in frustration. Don't worry, allow me. Smiling, Zhang Xian walked up to the eccentric old man. His cultivation was only at nascent saint pinnacle, but his true strength was even beyond that of the Saint Tu Dan combat master Zhu Qingfeng. As powerful as the blue tigress beast was, there was no way it could be a match for him. After subduing it with a single strike, he was able to force it to obey his orders. He didn't tame the blue tigress beast as the latter already had a master, but it no longer posed a threat to him. You are senior eccentric old man, right? Zhang Xian asked. I have a request to ask of you here. I wish to buy a sepulchre flower from you. The higher the maturity it has, the better it will be. You have a request to ask of me? Glancing at the shattered fragments of his doors and his fawning tamed beast, the eccentric old man's lips twitched uncontrollably. Is this how you make a request with others? To destroy my doors as soon as you arrive and even leave my tamed beast in such a weird state? You are clearly not making a request with me but coercing me to submit. You want to buy a sepulchre flower from me? Sure, over my dead body. With clenched jaws, the eccentric old man roared with a face reddened in anger. Over your dead body? Zhang Xian sighed deeply before shaking his head helplessly. Since you said so, I guess I have no choice then. After saying those words, his eyebrows shot up and a powerful aura burst forth from him. In the next moment, he charged forward and thrust his fist with incredible might. Boom! In that moment, the eccentric old man couldn't help but feel as if a hurricane was headed in his way. He could tell that the other party's cultivation was clearly beneath his, but for some reason, the other party's strength and jinqi purity was way out of his league. If that palm were to strike, he could very well be reduced to a slab of meat. Damn it! The eccentric old man's face turned livid. Exerting the full might of his body into his legs, he hurriedly leaped backward, and his silhouette flashed across space as if a streak of lightning. He was only at Saint One Dan, but his movement technique was particularly profound. In the blink of an eye, he had already made a clean escape from Zhang Xian's palm strike. Fearing that the other party would continue his attack, he took this opportunity to leap backwards 2 more times to create a safe distance between them. It was only when he was nearly back to back with his residence did he finally come to a halt. Ah! Heaving a sigh of relief, he looked to his front and saw that the other party was still standing on the spot, seemingly not intending to continue his attack. The other party's hands were behind his back, and his head was tilted slightly upward, seemingly gazing deeply into the heaven. A light breeze blew, and the other party's robe fluttered slightly. In that instant, the eccentric old man couldn't help but have the impression that the middle-aged man before him was an unparalleled expert, and his face twitched slightly. Wasn't this change a little too fast? It was just a moment ago that the other party had charged at him ferociously, intending to send him into death's embrace. Yet, in the blink of an eye, he had already transformed into a transcendental expert who had seen through the vicissitudes of life. Even a professional actor couldn't possibly leap from role to role that quickly. He wasn't the only one who felt crazed by the sight before him. Even Zhou Xian and Hu Yunsheng were dumbstruck as well. It seemed like the greatest strength of the fellow before them wasn't his strength but his ability to switch faces. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking or what he was going to do. If you wish to kill me, so be it. Making fun of me? Don't even think about it. The eccentric old man roared furiously. He felt that the other party was intentionally toying with him. The other party clearly had the strength to kill him and take the sepulchre flower easily, but he wasn't making a move at all. Making fun of you? You are misunderstanding me. Zhang Xian shook his head before continuing, I would just like to say that it has indeed been hard on you to persevere for so many years under the agony of the green spittle poison. Ah? Why you? Those words were like a bucket of cold water, extinguishing the flames of anger burning within the eccentric old man. He weakly staggered 2 steps behind, only to find that he was already pressed against the wall of his residence. He opened his mouth to speak, but not a word would come out from his throat. Disbelief could be seen in his eyes. Just like what the other party had said, he was indeed afflicted with the deadly green spittle poison. It was only due to his extraordinary mastery in the way of medicine that he was able to survive for so long, but even so, he was swiftly approaching his limit. He had never told anyone about this matter before, and he was certain he had never met the middle-aged man before his eyes. So how could the other party tell with a single glance? He couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Green spittle poison, a lethal poison contained within the saliva of the Saint Four Dan green spittle snake. Even a Saint Four Dan cultivator could die in moments after being afflicted by it. If I am not mistaken, the reason why you are able to survive for so long is because you have consumed a 7-flower grass when you were younger, right? Before he could ask about it, the middle-aged man had continued nonchalantly. A shudder ran through the eccentric old man's body. The other party was right. He had indeed consumed a 7-flower grass by accident when he was 7. The 7-flower grass was a kind of slow-acting poison which gradually wore down one's body. But while it wasn't lethal in the short run, it could cause immense pain to the afflicted. It was for this reason that drove him to work frenziedly on the way of medicine, in hopes that he could cure himself one day. It had been many years since then, and very few of his peers knew of it. For the middle-aged man before him to know about it as well, could the other party be his old friend? Taking a closer look at the middle-aged man, he shook his head. Be it the other party's appearance or disposition, neither of them sparked anything in his mind. He was certain that he had never met the other party before. Actually, it is not too difficult for me to deduce all of this. Those who have consumed the green spittle poison will have a slight grayish hue over his body, and their iris will also turn grayish with a thin crimson line at the center, deeply resembling the eyes of a snake from afar. But of course, those evidences are only sufficient for me to deduce that you are afflicted with the green spittle poison. What that made me certain that you have consumed a 7-star flower when you were younger is the slightly white hue at your fingertips instead of a grayish one. If I am not mistaken, you must have accidentally pricked yourself with the thorns of the 7-star flower while picking it. Zhang Xian said. This. The eccentric old man's body shuddered once more. He was still too young back then, so there were several matters that he could hardly remember. However, under the other party's reminder, he did vaguely recall that his finger had been pricked by a 7-star flower in the past. The thorns of the 7-star flower contains poison, but it happens to have the effect of neutralizing the venom of the green spittle snake as well. Due to the both poisons clashing in your body, you were able to avoid immediate fatality. However, it had also become the cause of your immense suffering as well. If I am not mistaken, every night, at the Z hour, your body will suddenly swell up, and you will feel an unbearable itch in your bones, right? Zhang Xian continued. 2300 to 0100, the eccentric old man's body stiffened. Seeing the other party's expression, Zhang Xian knew that he had already achieved his goal. With a bright smile, he said, "All right. Shall we head to your room to discuss the sales of your sepulchre flower now?" The eccentric old man hurriedly lowered his posture and invited Zhang Xian in with a gesture. "Yes, of course. This way please. Senior." Hearing the conversation between the both of them, Zhou Xian was completely bewildered. Subconsciously, he took a step forward, wanting to ask what was happening. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and prepare some tea for this venerable gentleman here," the eccentric old man berated. Chapter 983, Curing the Poison. What the heck? Such a lack of situational awareness, and you still want to take me as your teacher? Dream on. The eccentric old man clicked his tongue in displeasure. Zhou Xian was on the verge of tears. "It was just a moment ago that you looked as if you were going to kill him. How am I to know that you would invite you into your residence as a venerated guest in the next moment? What are you dilly-dallying about for?" As frustrated as Zhou Xian was, he still turned to his servant and commanded him. The servant. "Forget it, I will do it myself." After a moment of hesitation, Zhou Xian waved his hand. It would seem more sincere for him to do it personally. Thus, he quickly turned around and rushed back to his residence. Paying no heed to Zhou Xian, Zhang Xian walked into the room and sat on the main seat. On the other hand, the eccentric old man sat by the side as he looked at Zhang Xian respectfully. A moment of silence drifted in the room. Eventually, unable to hold himself back anymore, the eccentric old man, with deep anticipation in his eyes, began speaking with a very careful tone. "Elder, regarding my green spittle poison. Considering how the other party was able to see through so much of his affliction in a single glance, it was very possible that the other party just might have the remedy to it. To a person with such sharp eye of discernment, the other party was definitely worthy of being addressed as an elder. Green spittle poison is a particularly troublesome grade 7 poison. Even a 7-star poison master will find it very difficult to cure it," Zhang Xian said. Hearing those words, the eccentric old man's face paled in despair. If even a 7-star poison master was unable to cure it, did it mean that there was no hope for his affliction? "However, I can cure it," Zhang Xian said. "You can cure it?" The eccentric old man's eyes narrowed. Clenching his fists tightly, many emotions flickered across his face, and eventually, he gritted his teeth tightly together and kneeled to the ground. "Elder, I beg you to save me." He had been tortured under the tyranny of the poison for far too long, and his mind and body were already reaching their limits. If the other party could really save him, putting aside kneeling down, he would be willing to even become the other party's slave without any hesitation. Dang Lang. Just as the eccentric old man kneeled down, Zhou Xian, who had just prepared the tea, entered the room and saw such an incredulous sight. Overwhelmed with shock, his grip on the tea tray loosened, and the teapot and teacups fell to the ground and shattered. He was truly on the verge of losing his mind. He knew very well how proud a person the eccentric old man was. He, the head of the physician guild, had paid respect to the other party for so many days, moving at the other party's beck and call as if a servant, and yet, the other party couldn't even be bothered to spare him a second glance. On the other party, that fellow had knocked down the eccentric old man's door and made his saint beast weird, but not only was the eccentric old man not angry, he ordered him to prepare tea and even kneeled down to the fellow. This was way too mind-blowing. A person who could very well be a 7-star physician and had not the slightest bit of deference towards the city lord's authority was actually kneeling on the floor to another man. Zhou Xian felt as if worldly views had collapsed in that instant, and that his mind was really going to blow up. There's no need to stand on ceremony, it is only a small matter. Not expecting the other party to kneel down, Zhang Xian shook his head and gestured for the other party to get back up. Elder, I do happen to have a sepulchre flower. It has a maturity of 200 years. If you have a need for it, feel free to take it away with you. At this moment, the eccentric old man suddenly recalled the request which Zhang Xian had come with, so he quickly added. Zhang Xian nodded. With this, his aim for paying a visit to the eccentric old man was achieved. It is not difficult to resolve the green spittle poison, but due to the long duration of your affliction, exceeding more than 20 years, the poison has already seeped deep into your bones and organs, making the situation even more tricky. The effectiveness of consuming an ordinary antidote will only be minimal at best. Thus, I am afraid that I might have to resort to some extreme means. After pondering for a moment, Zhang Xian said. As long as my poison can be cured, I am willing to do anything at all. The eccentric old man nodded resolutely. Good. Seeing that the other party was mentally prepared, Zhang Xian nodded with an approving smile. After which, he flicked his wrist, took out a piece of paper and brush, and began writing out a prescription. I need these medicinal herbs. The higher their maturity, the better it will be. The eccentric old man took the paper and glanced at the ingredient. A moment later, he nodded and passed the prescription to the nearby Zhou Xian. Prepare these medicinal herbs for me, and I can consider taking you in as my student. Yes. Hearing those words, Zhou Xian's eyes lit up. Not daring to waste any time, he hurriedly rushed out of the room to prepare the stated medicinal herbs. Prepare a huge pot. I will be putting the medicinal herbs and boil them along with you. Zhang Xian continued. Boil them along with me? The eccentric old man's eyebrows shot up. Given his cultivation, he wouldn't suffer any severe injuries from coming into contact with scalding water. Nevertheless, it still wasn't a pleasant sensation to be boiled alive. Indeed. You have been afflicted with the poison for far too long, and the huge amounts of medicinal herbs you have consumed over the years only serve to further complicate your condition. It is imperative to first boil out those worthless medicinal substances within your body before going ahead with the treatment. Zhang Xian explained. The eccentric old man nodded in realization. As physician, he was well aware of his own physical condition. The antidotes he had tried out over the past few years could easily fill several baskets, if not a cart. With so many medicinal substances accruing within his body, they could easily render even the real antidote ineffective. The purpose of the boiling process was to clear his body from the remaining medicinal substances, thus returning his body back to its original state. After the medicinal substances have been boiled out of your body, consume this gourd of medicinal wine with that, you should be cured of the green spittle poison in your body. Flicking his wrist, Zhang Xian took out a gourd and passed it over to the eccentric old man. Ordinary antidotes couldn't hope to seep deeply into the eccentric old man's organs and bones to cleanse him of the green spittle poison. Thus, Zhang Xian had no choice but to resort to his heaven's path Zhenqi. But of course, it was still necessary to condition the other party's body to its best state beforehand, or else he would require a colossal amount of Zhenqi. After all, a lethal poison that was capable of killing a Saint Four Dan expert wasn't something that could be easily resolved with just a surge of 2 of Zhenqi. Thank you. With gratitude gleaming in his eyes, the eccentric old man took the gourd. An antidote that could cure a grade 7 poison was surely worth far more than a sepulchre flower, and yet, the other party actually gave it to him without any hesitation. Elder, wait here for a moment. I will take the sepulchre flower over right now. After learning the treatment method, the eccentric old man immediately rushed out of the room, and not too long later, he returned with a jade box in his hands. Taking the jade box over, Zhang Xian pried it open lightly and saw a pure white medicinal herb lying inside, reminiscent of a beautiful jade. It exuded a light fragrance which tickled one's nose. With a slight nod, Zhang Xian passed the sepulchre flower over to Hu Yunsheng and instructed, return to Incloud Quarter and prepare for its auctioning. I want the news that this medicinal herb was going to be auctioned to be known by the entire city. Yes. Hu Yunsheng nodded before leaving with the medicinal herb in hand. After which, Zhang Xian closed his eyes and waited patiently. 2 hours later. Zhou Xian finally returned with the medicinal herbs required. Zhang Xian swiftly arranged for them to be added into a huge pot to be boiled. When he gauged that the medicinal properties of the medicinal herbs had finally seeped sufficiently into the boiling water, he gestured for the eccentric old man to go into the pot. Tzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. Before long, countless dark substances started emerging from the eccentric old man's pores, dyeing the clear water in the pot ink black. Zhang Xian stepped forward and tapped his finger on several points of the other party's body. After which, he flicked his wrist and took out a bundle of needles. With a swift jerk of his hand, the needles flew out and pierced precise locations over the other party's body. Some time later, after when the water in the pot had been switched several times, the eccentric old man's skin was finally rid of its grayish hue, returning to the original white complexion it had. Knowing that the first step of the treatment was done, Zhang Xian indicated for the eccentric old man to drink the wine in the gourd. Not too long later, the grayish color in his eyes also began to disappear. Hung long long. By the time the crimson line disappeared, the eccentric old man's body finally slackened. In that instant, a powerful aura burst into the sky, and his initial Saint One Dan cultivation abruptly surged at an inconceivable speed. This. Zhou Xian widened his eyes in disbelief. Noticing the incomprehension in Zhou Xian's eyes, Zhang Xian explained with a smile, the lethal poison in his body had suppressed his cultivation previously. Now that the poison is cured, naturally, he will be able to revert back to his true strength. The reason why he was able to notice the eccentric old man's poison was naturally due to the latter executing a battle technique, thus compiling a corresponding book in the Library of Heaven's Path. The book had introduced the problems which the eccentric old man was facing, but at the same time, it had also stated the other party's identity: Qingyuan Empire, 7-star pinnacle physician. How could a 7-star pinnacle physician possibly only possess a cultivation of Saint One Dan? Most likely, the eccentric old man must have been poisoned by someone, but by some stroke of luck, he managed to survive the initial attempt on his life. However, with his body severely weakened by the effects of the poison, he was left with no choice but to lie low in a remote location. As years went by, the relentless assault of the poison gradually suppressed his cultivation, resulting in his current state. With the lethal poison resolved, his cultivation was no longer suppressed, thus reverting back to its original level. Boom! Tremendous energy was building within the eccentric old man, and before long, he surpassed his Saint One Dan bottleneck and reached Saint Two Dan's spiritual perception realm. Shortly after, Saint Three Dan embryonic soul realm. 2 hours later, with a huge burst of energy, Saint Four Dan primordial spirit realm. With his poison resolved, his cultivation finally returned back to its peak. Standing up, the eccentric old man felt the strength coursing through his veins, and his eyes couldn't help but redden. How many years had it been? For how long had he wished that he would be able to rid himself of his affliction and return back to his peak? Too much time had gone by, and his initial hopes were extinguished. He had already resigned himself to living his life quietly in this remote land. Who could have thought that a middle-aged man would abruptly enter his life and resolve his affliction for him? Thank you for granting me a new life, elder. The eccentric old man immediately got to his knees and thanked Zhang Xian earnestly. He had kneeled earlier as well, but it was out of his overwhelming desire to be treated. This time, however, it was out of earnest respect and gratitude towards his savior. You are welcome. Zhang Xian nodded. The eccentric old man was a physician, a man who had spent his life saving others from their anguish and sufferings. If it was within his means to do so, it was only right for him to save the other party. The person who has poisoned you must be a poison master, right? Zhang Xian asked with a frown. The green spittle poison was something which even 7-star poison masters would struggle to concoct. It was unlikely that anyone other than a poison master would wield such poison on him. It is indeed the doing of a poison master. However, with my cultivation recovered, I will have him pay the price of his actions. With a cold glint in his eyes, the eccentric old man clenched his fists tightly. Seeing that the other party was unwilling to speak any more on the matter, Zhang Xian chose not to delve deeper into the matter either. May I know how I should address elder? The eccentric old man asked. A life debt had to be repaid. Yet, he didn't even know the other party's name even at this point in time. It was indeed embarrassing. My name is Sun Chang. Zhang Xian said. I see, so it's elder son. Nodding, the eccentric old man flicked his wrist, took out a token, and handed it over to Zhang Xian respectfully. I happen to have some influence in the Qingyuan Empire Physician Guild, so if you were to face any trouble, do make sure to look for me with this token in hand. As long as it is within my means, I will make sure to accomplish it for you. All right. Taking the token, Zhang Xian nodded. He would eventually have to head to Qingyuan Empire one day, and since the other party was willing to do him this favor, it would be fine to accept it. After all, there was no saying that there could be a day that he might need it. Since your poison has been cured, I will take my leave now. Farewell. Zhang Xian felt that there was no reason for him to remain since the other party's poison had been cured, so he made his way out and headed to Incloud Quarter. Not too long later, before he could enter Incloud Quarter, he already saw Hu Yunsheng rushing out with a livid face. The latter also saw him and immediately rushed up to him while exclaiming, Elder, bad news. Chapter 984, City Lord, what's wrong? Seeing the anxious look on Hu Yunsheng's face, Zhang Xian frowned. As the boss of a powerful organization, as well as a Saint One Dan expert, there was no way the other party would panic over minor affairs. I had my men spread the news regarding the auctioning of the sepulchre flower across the city as soon as I returned to Incloud Quarter. However, an hour later, a group of men came and insisted on purchasing the sepulchre flower ahead of the auction. Hu Yunsheng explained with a livid look. Judging from how forceful they were acting, it seems like they are intending to force a trade. Force a trade? Is the other party a poison master? Zhang Xian was taken aback. Weren't poison masters the only ones who would be attracted by the sepulchre flower? Was there some other use to it that he wasn't aware of? They aren't. Hu Yunsheng shook his head affirmatively. How can you be that certain? Zhang Xian was surprised by the other party's firm response. After all, it should be impossible to identify a poison master when he wasn't using poison. As such, it was possible for anyone to be a poison master. Given so, on what grounds could Hu Yunsheng be so confident that the group of men who insisted on purchasing the sepulchre flower weren't poison masters? This is because I know those guys who came over. Hu Yunsheng replied. They are City Lord Hong Jin of Jinyuan City and his guards. The City Lord? What does he need the sepulchre flower for? Zhang Xian was perplexed. The sepulchre flower was needed by the poison masters to concoct poison, but why would a city lord require such an item? Not to mention, to go to the extent of forcing a trade for it. I tried to sound him out, but he isn't speaking a word about it, so I am not too sure either. I have already told him that the item belongs not to Incloud Quarter but to you, and he is insisting on meeting you to negotiate now. Hu Yunsheng said. Bring me over. Zhang Xian nodded. Regardless of why the other party needed the sepulchre flower, this matter should indeed be resolved. Since the other party had requested to meet him, there was no reason for him to turn him down. Under Hu Yunsheng's lead, he soon arrived at a relatively spacious room. An authoritative-looking middle-aged man sat majestically on the main seat in the room, exuding an air of superiority. Behind him were several armored guards which carried a powerful aura. They were all transcendent mortal 9 Dan Chrysalis realm cultivators. City Lord Hong, this is the owner of the sepulchre flower, Elder Sun Chang. Walking up, Hu Yunsheng clasped his fist and introduced. The middle-aged man shot a glance at Zhang Xian, and upon seeing that the other party was a mere nascent saint cultivator, he chuckled softly and said, "This friend over here, I wish to buy your sepulchre flower. Give me a price." Zhang Xian was a little surprised by how direct the other party was. With a wry smile on his face, he asked, "What price can you offer me?" A sepulchre flower with a maturity of 100 years is usually worth 80 high-tier spirit stones. Since yours has a maturity slightly higher than that, I will give you 100 and throw in a spirit high-tier weapon on top of that, the middle-aged man said. Hearing the offer, Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. Don't you think your offer is a little low? Putting aside the rarity of the sepulchre flower, even the price at which Hu Yunsheng purchased his sepulchre flower at back then was higher than the offer that this city lord was giving. The other party was indeed trying to force a trade here. Audacious. It is your honor for our esteemed city lord to be interested in your item, you better know your place. A guard standing behind the middle-aged man bellowed loudly. 100 high-tier spirit stones and a spirit high-tier weapon is the best price you will get for your sepulchre flower. Even if you were to go through the auction, it is unlikely that you will be able to get anything higher. Furthermore, it is unsafe to keep such a valuable artifact with you. Listen to my advice and sell it. The second guard said. The devil and the angel, a threat and an advice. Ultimately, this was nothing more than a mere ploy for him to hand over his medicinal herbs obediently. Seeing through what the other party was playing at, Zhang Xian burst into laughter and shook his head before saying, 10,000 high-tier spirit stones, and I will sell it to you straight. What did you say? The eyebrows of the middle-aged man shot up. His offer was 100, yet the other party's offer was 10,000. That was a blatant disregard for his standing as the city lord. Insolence! How dare you! The first guard bellowed once more, but before he could finish his words, Zhang Xian's voice had already sounded once more. 20,000. Are you certain that you want to do this? I am only saying this out of concern for you, but, the second guard said with a frown. 30,000. Zhang Xian declared. You. The middle-aged man's face reddened as his eyebrows knitted together tightly. In this moment, it felt as if his rage would burst forth at any moment. The other party clearly had no intentions of selling the sepulchre flower to him, and from the looks of it, the other party also didn't care who he was either. Friend, allow me to give you a word of advice. You are in Jingyuan City at this very moment. Regardless of who you are, you would do well to carry yourself humbly. Otherwise, you won't know what kind of trouble you will be bringing to yourself. The middle-aged man harumphed coldly with narrowed eyes. 50,000. Zhang Xian waved his hands nonchalantly and continued, unbothered by the threats the other party was making. Trying to throw your weight before me? Ha, heaven knows which sandpit you were kneading mud in when I was out posturing in the world. Humph, let's go. Seeing how the owner of the sepulchre flower wasn't willing to budge at all, the middle-aged man harumphed coldly before walking out of the room. The moment he stepped out of the room, his face immediately turned livid with rage. City Lord, shall we dispatch our men to snatch the sepulchre flower over? The first guard glanced at the room behind him coldly as he subtly pulled his thumb horizontally before his throat, a gesture to kill. There is no need for that. I do need the sepulchre flower, but since that fellow is going to auction it, there's no harm in going through the official process. A glint appeared in the middle-aged man's narrowed eyes. I don't believe that there would be anyone in Jinyuan City who will dare bid against me. Indeed. The eyes of the two guards lit up. Living in Jinyuan City, who would be so foolish to offend the city lord over a mere flower? As long as no one dared to bid against him, he could easily take down the flower at any price he wanted. By then, that fellow would be deeply regretting not selling the sepulchre flower to him for 100 high-tier spirit stones. Let's go. The city lord said before walking away with widened strides. Elder, aren't you being a little reckless offending the city lord like that? Hu Yunsheng asked with a conflicted look on his face. It's fine. It is one thing if he doesn't pull anything, but if he does, I don't mind replacing him with someone else. Zhang Xian replied nonchalantly. With the influence and power he wielded at the moment, there was no need for him to lie low anymore. If the city lord knew what was good for him, he would do well to drop whatever malicious thought he had in mind. Otherwise, he didn't mind teaching the other party a lesson. As long as he gave Yu Shenqing a heads up, there was no one who would dare object to him changing a city lord or two. Or if it were to come down to it, he could even dispatch a few master teachers down to investigate this Jingyuan city lord. A person who would force a trade on others was bound to have committed plenty of atrocious deed during his rule. With those misdeeds the other party had done in the past, he could indict the other party and have him severely punished for his crimes. All right then. Hu Yunsheng was still a little skeptical, but recalling the incredible prowess that the elder before him had displayed earlier in the eccentric old man's residence, he decided not to think too much into the matter. A short moment later, he continued, I think there is a chance that the city lord might engage in bid rigging by scaring off the other bidders. If that were to happen, it might prove to be a little troublesome. Scaring off other bidders? Given his standing and influence, he could easily demand others not to compete with him in the bidding of the sepulchre flower. If so, I fear that the poison masters might be dissuaded from participating in the auction as well. Hu Yunsheng replied. Inkcloud Quarter conducted auctions regularly, so he was rather familiar with the various ploys that bidders could use to undermine the auction system. It wasn't rare for those who wielded great authority and power to use their standing to force the other bidders to remain silent, thus obtaining the item at a discounted price. Despite having met with this situation several times, Hu Yunsheng was still unable to find any good solution to the problem. This is simple. Plant a person in the midst of the auction, and as long as that fellow dares to raise the price, have your man double the current price. It's my item anyway, so it doesn't matter even if the price hikes up to 1,000,000 high-tier spirit stones. Zhang Xian replied. This. Hu Yunsheng blinked his eyes in shock. To actually hike up the price of your own item, isn't it a little too shameless to do that? However, thinking about it, that was indeed a good idea to this situation. This idea was cheap, but that was precisely what they needed to choke the other party with anger and frustration. Alright, go and make preparations. As long as I can uncover the location of the poison hall, I will resolve your poison. Zhang Xian said. Yes. Hu Yunsheng nodded before taking his leave. Shortly after he left, Zhang Xian's body jolted slightly before vanishing on the spot. In the next moment, he appeared in the myriad anthive nest. At this moment, the anthive nest had already been fully expanded. It had a length of 500 meters from one end to the other, an incredibly vast space, and there were all sorts of buildings here and there, reminiscent of a massive village. Master. Upon seeing Zhang Xian, the many tamed beasts within the anthive nest hurried forward and greeted him. Living within the anthive nest were the Byzantium Helios beast and the 9 kings of the Cloud Mist Ridge. With this powerful force, he could easily wipe the remote Jingyuan city off the map without lifting a finger. Cultivate hard. If I have time, I will come in to resolve the problems you face in your cultivation. Nodding at the various beasts, Zhang Xian said. These saint beasts were a strong fighting force for him. As such, after placing them in the anthive nest, he had been lecturing them whenever he had time. Over the past 2 to 3 months, they had made significant advancement in their fighting prowess. Were it not for the inability of saint beasts to practice cultivation techniques, these fellows should have advanced their cultivation to an incredible level by now. After instructing the saint beasts to work hard in their training, Zhang Xian headed towards a certain room. Within the room, Wei Ruyan lay peacefully with her eyes closed on a clean bed. As the goal of finding the poison hall was to resolve the poison aura in her body, naturally, Zhang Xian had been bringing her around through the anthive nest. He placed his hand on the girl's pulse, and a moment later, he heaved a sigh of relief. It seems like she still can hold on for some time. He hadn't found any good way to resolve Wei Ruyan's dangerous accumulation of poison aura, but through his means, he was still able to alleviate her situation temporarily and stabilize her condition. She was unlikely to wake up until her affliction was resolved, but at the very least, there was no threat on her life for the time being. This last sure is pitiful. Zhang Xian sighed deeply and shook his head. From her birth, she was tortured by her illness, putting her in great misery. It wasn't easy for her to grow to adulthood, but by the time she realized it, she had lost her closest kin, her father. It was no wonder why others called the innate poison body constitution of disaster. It brought disaster not only to others but even to the person herself as well, depriving her of even a single day that was devoid of pain and suffering. After confirming that Wei Ruyan's condition was still stable for the moment, Zhang Xian headed to the specially built training grounds and sat down there. It had been more than 10 days since he had reached nascent Saint Pinnacle, and while he hadn't obtained the artifact required for his breakthrough to Saint One Dan, he hadn't been slacking on his training either. Every single day, he would make sure to spend some time on furthering his cultivation without fail. Under his persistent hard work, his Jinqi was getting more and more pure and condensed. Ever since reaching half-saint, he could feel that it was getting more and more difficult to make breakthroughs as compared to from before. In the past, the breakthrough of a realm only took 2 hours, but now, it was taking a few minutes more than before. As expected, cultivating is not as easy as I thought. Zhang Xian shook his head and sighed. Cultivation was indeed a path fraught with difficulty. Without diligence and mental resilience, it was impossible to persevere on. 6 hours passed in a flash. Making a quick calculation, Zhang Xian deduced that it should be night outside, and the auction should be starting soon. Thus, he backed out of the anthive nest. Shortly after he returned to his room, Hu Yunsheng walked in. "Elder, the auction will be starting soon." Nodding, Zhang Xian followed Hu Yunsheng towards the direction of the auction. However, before they could get to the allocated VIP compartment, he suddenly frowned for a moment before his footsteps came to a complete halt. Chapter 985, Pummeling Your Teacher, Elder. Noticing that Zhang Xian had stopped his footsteps, Hu Yunsheng asked in surprise. "You can head on to the compartment first. Do as I have said earlier, make sure to take note of everyone who has bidded for the sepulchre flower and record their names down. I have some matters to attend to at the moment. Don't worry, I will return quickly." Zhang Xian instructed. "Yes." Not daring to say any more, Hu Yunsheng quickly nodded before proceeding ahead. Zhang Xian's frown didn't alleviate with Hu Yunsheng's departure. On the contrary, it deepened. Turning around, he flitted away. Shortly after, he arrived at the entrance of the vast auction hall. The surroundings were filled with huge crowds, presumably here to participate in the auction. Scanning the area, Zhang Xian's eyes soon stopped on an average-looking middle-aged man. On the surface, that fellow seemed to be a Saint One Dan primary stage cultivator who harnessed water attribute Jinqi, an unspectacular character in the greater scheme of things. However, for some reason, his presence left Zhang Xian feeling a little uneasy. The same uneasy sensation that he had felt back at the subterranean gallery. He is an otherworldly demon. Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes. Having killed more than 200 otherworldly demons in the subterranean gallery, he could vaguely tell how fearsome the person before him was. Despite the other party not exuding any killing intent at the moment, he felt an incredible pressure weighing down on him. Furthermore, his principal's seal was trembling in agitation, seemingly about to leap out at any moment. Eye of Insight. Faint green lines appeared in Zhang Xian's black iris. Taking a look once more, his intuition was spot on. The other party was indeed an otherworldly demons. It was unknown what technique the other party used, but he was able to seal his immense killing intent entirely beneath a layer of water ripple, making it impossible for even the Saint Realm cultivators around him from seeing through his true identity. Were it not for Zhang Xian having clashed with a huge number of otherworldly demons in the subterranean gallery, which granted him a deeper insight into the otherworldly demonic tribe, and his possession of the Eye of Insight, there was no way he would have known that the person before him was an otherworldly demon. "I can't see through that fellow's strength." Zhang Xian clenched his fists tightly together. Due to the other party's unique disguising method, most perception methods were unable to work on him. The powerful eye of insight was able to see through the other party's true form, but it was unable to determine the other party's cultivation. But of course, it might also be because the other party's strength was far beyond him. However, the pressing question at hand was not how powerful that fellow was, but why would an otherworldly demon disguise himself as a human in the remote Jingyuan city and appear at the entrance of this auction hall? Did he intend to participate in the auction as well? Was the sepulchre flower of value to the otherworldly demonic tribe too? I can't allow him to enter the auction hall. Stroking his lower jaw, Zhang Xian fell into deep thoughts. A Saint Realm otherworldly demon suddenly appearing in a human city, there was bound to be some kind of ploy involved here. No matter what the other party was up to, he had to foil his plans. For one, he should hinder the other party from participating in the auction and obtaining what he wanted. Just that, how should I do it without alarming others? Zhang Xian frowned in frustration. They were right at the entrance of the auction hall at the moment. Regardless of whether he did it himself or dispatched his puppets to do it for him, it would cause a huge uproar. If things were to go badly, the auction hall might even be torn apart. Furthermore, if he were to corner the other party too far, the other party might be forced to utilize his means as an otherworldly demon to retaliate. If so, the realization that the otherworldly demonic tribe could be lurking within Jingyuan City would cause a huge pandemonium. An army of master teacher could very well be brought into Jingyuan City to investigate the matter, forcing the poison masters to lie low. By then, it would be nigh impossible for him to find any poison master to lead him to the poison hall. While deep in thought, he saw the disguised otherworldly demon following the bustling crowd into the auction hall. If he wanted to act, he would have to do it now. Once the other party was settled in the auction hall, it would be impossible to drag the other party out without causing a pandemonium. There is no time to plan anymore. I will just have to deal with whatever that comes my way. Knowing that he didn't have the luxury of time, Zhang Xian dashed forward and blocked the disguised otherworldly demon's path. What are you doing? Seeing that someone had suddenly blocked his path, the disguised otherworldly demon frowned in displeasure. Voila! Following which, the two guards beside the disguised otherworldly demon stepped forward and drew their swords, seemingly ready to make a move should Zhang Xian try anything funny. These two guards were Chrysalis Realm pinnacle experts, but they weren't otherworldly demons, just ordinary cultivators. May I know why this friend over here is blocking my way? Seeing that everyone's gaze was drawn towards him, the disguised otherworldly demon waved his hands casually, indicating for the guards to step down before turning to Zhang Xian. The disguised otherworldly demon knew that it was not to his advantage to draw attention towards himself. After all, it was more likely for his true identity to be exposed should he be placed under the spotlight. Moreover, disguised as a human in Jingyuan City, he had a mission to accomplish as well. It wouldn't do to draw too many eyes upon himself at this moment. The heaven isn't blind after all. After so many years, it has finally brought me to you. Paying no heed the disguised otherworldly demon's words, a look of extreme agitation suddenly surfaced on Zhang Xian's face as he rushed forward to hug the other party. Frowning, the otherworldly demon raised his palm and pushed Zhang Xian away. I am Sun Chang. Don't you recognize me? Being pushed away, Zhang Xian looked at the disguised otherworldly demon anxiously and quickly introduced himself, as if worried that his old friend didn't recognize him. Sun Chang. The disguised otherworldly demon frowned. I'm sorry. You must have gotten the wrong person. As an otherworldly demon infiltrating the Master Teacher continent, how could he possibly have any acquaintances here? Just where in this world did this fool pop out from? There is no way I could have gotten the wrong person. Ignoring the other party's cold attitude, Zhang Xian grabbed the other party arm in agitation and said, We have grown up together, and I can still remember how arrogant you were when you were younger. Back then, after you managed to achieve a huge breakthrough in your cultivation, you viciously pummeled our teacher because you thought he was too nosy. In order to avenge your pet, you specially concocted a poison and killed a Saint Realm expert. On top of that, you also studied the arts of the soul oracle and used your soul to conduct quite a few misdeeds. These memories are still very fresh in my mind, as if they had only happened yesterday. There is no way I can ever mistake you for another person. He pummeled his own teacher because he thought his teacher was too nosy. How can a person treat his teacher like that? Concocting poison to kill a Saint Realm expert, he is a poison master. He learned the arts of the soul oracle. Didn't the soul oracles betray humanity for the otherworldly demonic tribe back then? Hearing those words, the gazes from the crowd started to turn hostile. Those of the master-teacher continent were taught to respect their teacher and lineage from young. A person who betrayed his own teacher and lineage would be scorned by others for his entire life. More important, poison masters and soul oracles were occupations that were scorned in the continent. It could already be said that it was very patient of them to not rush forward and pummel that person before them. What nonsense are you spouting? Seeing how a person he didn't recognize suddenly uttering such nonsense here, the eyebrows of the otherworldly demon shot up, and he nearly erupted on the spot. I don't even know you. If the crowd were to turn against him over this matter and his true identity was revealed in the process, how was he going to accomplish his mission? Thus, he jerked his arm forcefully, knocking away the hand that was grasping him. You don't know me? Very well. As if displeased by the other party's action of feigning ignorance, Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. 3 years ago, when you were being pursued by your enemies and was on the verge of death, I was the one who saved you. If I remember correctly, your enemies managed to impale your left shoulder back then, and the wound should have left a scar. Since you said that you don't know me, do you dare to show your left shoulder to all of us right here to prove that I was lying? You. The disguised otherworldly demon was stunned for a moment before clenching his fists tightly in frustration. His left shoulder had indeed been impaled by a special weapon 3 years ago. To this day, he still had yet to recover from it fully, and the wound had also left a permanent scar on his left shoulder. Due to the unique nature of the injury, he wasn't able to conceal it even when disguising as a human, as his wound had been concealed within his clothes all along, and he had never shown it to anyone before. Not even his closest friend was aware of this matter. Where in the world did that fellow learn of this matter? Why? You dare not show your shoulder right here? Well, of course you don't. Your injury was caused by a spear imbued with the fire attribute, whereas the cultivation technique you practice is of the water attribute. As such, that wound has resulted in a permanent scar which you can't erase. On top of that, the encounter has also left a hidden trauma in your body. A surge of flame Jinqi will relentlessly strike your Hunin acupoint every full moon, leaving you in great agony. How is it? Is there any mistake in what I have said? Zhang Xian continued. Why you? The disguised otherworldly demon was only astonished when the other party spoke about the scar on his left shoulder, but at this moment, he felt so crazed that his eyes were on the verge of popping from their sockets. The other party's description was spot on. The scar on his left shoulder was indeed caused by a spear imbued with the fire attribute, and it was also true that he cultivated a water attribute cultivation technique. The matter about there being a surge of flame Jinqi in his body torturing him every month was also correct. There was no mistake in the other party's account at all. But he was certain that he didn't know the other party, and even if he did, he had never told anyone of the problems he was facing either. So how did this fellow find out? You still don't remember me? Are you hiding something that makes it inconvenient for you to reveal your identity? Is that the reason why you are hiding from me? Zhang Xian continued. Cough cough. Brother Sun Chang, I finally recognize you now. As that person spoke on, the gazes directed towards him was becoming more and more peculiar. Fearing that his identity might just be dredged up should the other party continue speaking, the disguised otherworldly demon could only concede with a look of awkwardness. That's more like it. I knew that I couldn't have possibly mistaken you for anyone else. Here, this is the fine wine that you savor the most. If you still regard me as your brother, drink it. Seeing the other party bending under the pressure from the surroundings, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. With a smiling face, he flicked his wrist, took out a gourd, and passed it over. You want me to drink? Right here. The disguised otherworldly demon was flabbergasted. What is with the sudden jump in logic? Even if we are good friends, surely there is a time and place to drink. We are right outside the auction hall, and there are so many people looking. You want me to drink right here? He wasn't the only one perplexed by Zhang Xian's abrupt words. The crowd was also baffled as well. Why? You don't trust me. You think that there is a problem with the wine I am giving you? Sigh, you really should work on that skeptical personality of yours. Fine, I will drink first. Shaking his head with a smile, Zhang Xian uncorked the wine gourd, and an intoxicating fragrance drifted into the surroundings. Tilting his head upwards, he took a hearty gulp of the wine. After he was done, he passed it over to the disguised otherworldly demon. Here you go. I think it will be better for us to drink another day. The auction is about to start, and I still have matters to attend to. A stranger he didn't know was abruptly offering him wine out of nowhere. He would be lying if he said he wasn't doubtful. That skeptical personality like yours sure is like the otherworldly demons, especially like that Qing Tian something Waterleaf King. Zhang Xian shook his head. Jai. As soon as the disguised otherworldly demon heard those words, his entire body stiffened. A hint of killing intent flashed across his eyes. It might seem as if the other party was uttering nonsense, but the other party had managed to identify him accurately. In other words, all of those that were spoken before was not a coincidence at all. The other party knew who he was. Just that he pondered for a while, but there was no one named Sun Cheng that he knew of. You're right. Good friends should indeed have a drink together. However, this isn't the place to do so. Why don't we go to a tavern together and drink our hearts out? Suppressing his killing intent, the disguised otherworldly demon chuckled amiably. In any case, if his identity was already compromised, there was only one thing that he could do: find an opportunity to kill the other party. Otherwise, if he were to be exposed right here, he would be unable to accomplish his mission. You want to drink together at a tavern? Sure. However, you have to drink my wine first before I will go with you. If you aren't even willing to reciprocate this kind gesture of mine, who knows whether you will be bringing me to drink or to the netherworld later on. A person who has beat up his teacher surely has no qualms about killing his close friends too, right? Zhang Xian said with a wry smile. You. The disguised otherworldly demon's face reddened. Chapter 986, Waterleaf King. One thing he could be sure at this moment was that the other party had already uncovered his identity. But his disguise should have been flawless. How could someone possibly see through it? Could it be that the other party possessed a cultivation more fearsome than him? Of course not. If a sip of wine can allay your fears, I am more than willing to do so. With a light smile, the disguised otherworldly demon swiftly concealed his loss of composure a moment ago. Taking the gourd from Zhang Xian's hands, he began assessing the wine carefully with narrowed eyes. For the other party to offer him a gourd of wine after uncovering his true identity, it was hard to believe that there was nothing wrong with the wine. Activating his spiritual perception, he swiftly swept through the contents of the wine, and the result left a deep frown on his forehead. The conclusion he received was that the gourd was filled with nothing more than ordinary wine. If there was anything peculiar about it, it was just that it was richly infused with spiritual energy. The disguised Waterleaf King hesitated for a moment, and eventually, he still felt that it was better to be safe than sorry. Thus, he passed the gourd back to Zhang Xian, took out a jade bottle, and said, I'm afraid that I don't fancy the wine you brought too much. Let's drink mine instead. This bottle of wine was his personal possession, so he could be confident that there was nothing wrong with it. Lifting up the jade bottle, the disguised otherworldly demon was just about to uncork the cap and take a drink when Zhang Xian suddenly stepped forward to grab the bottle. You don't like the wine I brought you? Let me take a look at what you have in here then. After saying those words, Zhang Xian uncorked the cap. The rich aroma of alcohol burst forth from the bottle. It was indeed far better than the wine he had in the gourd earlier. Fine wine indeed. It is no wonder you aren't interested in the one I have. Here. Zhang Xian took a swift glance at it before passing it back, not making any peculiar actions at all. Taking everything into sight, the disguised otherworldly demon heaved a sigh of relief when he confirmed that the other party hadn't done anything to the wine in the bottle. He took the bottle back from Zhang Xian's hand and took a sip from it. All right, shall we head to a tavern together and drink our hearts away, the disguised otherworldly demon said with a smile. Of course. Zhang Xian nodded. Lord. Seeing that the esteemed guest which they were supposed to be escorting leaving the area to drink with someone else, the two guards standing beside the disguised otherworldly demon glanced at one another in confusion. Isn't he here to participate in the auction? Why is he leaving before the auction has even started? The both of you can head in first. I will return swiftly. The disguised otherworldly demon waved his hand nonchalantly. Yes. Seeing that the other party had already made up his mind, the guards hesitated for a moment before nodding. Even their master had to obey the commands of the man before them, so naturally, they dared not to go against the other party's orders either. Let's go. Seeing that the other party was done, Zhang Xian took the lead, and before long, they were out of Cloud Quarter. Walking along the streets, they soon arrived at a remote alley. Seeing that there was no one around, the otherworldly demon couldn't hold himself back any longer. Rushing forward to block Zhang Xian's path, he asked with a cold glint in his eyes, "Who in the world are you?" "Me? I am just an ordinary human." On the other hand, for an otherworldly demon like you to be walking in public disguised as a human, you sure are brazen. At which, Zhang Xian's lips curled up. Isn't that so, Waterleaf King? Why who are you? The disguised otherworldly demon raised his palm and closed it, and a torrent of jinqi sealed the space in the surroundings. A powerful surge of killing intent burst into the area, and all of a sudden, the entire street seemed to have turned into a living hell. From the moment he realized that the other party had uncovered his true identity, he had already decided to kill the other party. Who am I? Zhang Xian shook his head. You aren't qualified to know who I am. Unwilling to speak? Fine by me too. I have no interest in learning a dead man's name either. The Waterleaf King roared furiously as his claws swiped at Zhang Xian with frightening swiftness. Voila! A burst of devastating jinqi rose up like waves of the ocean. Under the tremendous might of the Waterleaf King, the streets creaked wildly, ready to collapse at any moment. From the great strength that the Waterleaf King was able to harness, Zhang Xian could tell that he was not at Saint 1 Dan or 2 Dan, but 4 Dan. Primordial Spirit Realm. You want to kill me? Zhang Xian stood calmly in face of the other party's attack, not surprised at all. Instead, he chuckled softly and said, I am afraid that you don't have the ability to do so. Lie down. Just like what he did back at Cloud Quarter, he snapped his fingers as he said those words. Pada! In the next moment, the powerful Waterleaf King's body abruptly stiffened before crashing forcefully into the ground. The immense might he had commanded a moment ago vanished like the receding tide. Lying on the floor, he coughed huge mouthfuls of blood. Why you poisoned me? In the narrowed eyes of the Waterleaf King, his disbelief was apparent. He had made sure to proceed warily, opting not to consume the other party's wine even after confirming that it hadn't been spiked. Yet, despite all of the preventive measures he had done, he still ended up being poisoned. Of course. How can I deal with a powerful king like you without resorting to certain means? Zhang Xian said with a smile. Through his eye of insight, he could only see that the other party was an otherworldly demon. He only managed to confirm the other party's identity through his Library of Heaven's path. His first gesture to hug the other party had forced the other party to drive his jinqi to knock him away, and that had allowed him to compile a book on the other party in the Library of Heaven's path. To his astonishment, the disguised otherworldly demon was actually an otherworldly demon king like the Golden Leaf King and Green Leaf King whom he killed at the subterranean gallery, previously Waterleaf King. A powerful Saint for Dan expert. For a powerful king like the other party to actually be hidden amongst the human populace, if he didn't stop the other party, it could very well end in a disaster. Even the utter destruction of Jingyuan City was possible. Even with Zhang Xian's current strength, it was unlikely that he would be able to fare well against the Waterleaf King. Relying on his otherworldly demon puppets was a plausible option, but even if he was able to kill the other party through such a mean, it would still stir up a huge commotion which would hinder his goal of finding a poison master. To be safe, he chose to lure the other party to drinking his wine instead. Hidden within the wine was his Heaven's Path Shinchi. With just a single thought from him, it could be instantaneously turned into lethal poison. The Waterleaf King was indeed smart, adamantly choosing not to drink his wine. However, even a person as wary as the other party couldn't have imagined that he would be able to poison the wine just by touching the jade bottle. Due to the incredible purity of the Heaven's Path Shinchi, it was able to seep through the miniature pores in the jade bottle. In the moment that Zhang Xian took the jade bottle, he discreetly infused a few surges of Heaven's Path Shinchi into the wine. Furthermore, the Heaven's Path Shinchi would only appear as ordinary spiritual energy when scanned through spiritual perception. But of course, the main reason why he was able to get the Waterleaf King to put his guard down was because it was inconceivable. Even the most formidable of poison masters would have to use poison powder, goo insects, or something of that sort in order to poison another. For one's Shinchi to actually harness lethal poison, that was unthinkable. I will bring you down with me. Seeing the other party admit to it, the Waterleaf King's face turned red. With a furious roar, he smacked his palm against the ground to push his body up and charged right towards Zhang Xian. But before he could strike, Zhang Xian uttered, "Down." Boom! With a snap of the fingers, the Waterleaf King fell vertically from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. Cold sweat trickled from his forehead. At this point, the Heaven's Path Shinchi had already infiltrated all of the acupoints and organs of the Waterleaf King's body. With just a thought, Zhang Xian would be able to kill him instantaneously. In terms of lethality, not even grade 7 poison could compare to it. As powerful as the Waterleaf King was, he was also completely helpless before it. What kind of poison is this? Realizing that something was amiss, the Waterleaf King widened his eyes in horror. In order to ensure the success of his mission, he had made sure to consume many antidotes beforehand so as to render them ineffective against him. Typically speaking, ordinary poisons should be completely ineffective on him. It was one thing for him to have not noticed when he was poisoned, but to be unable to feel the poison when it was already in his body, that was really a little frightening. Could it be that he had already been poisoned by a 7-star poison master even before the start of his mission? But wasn't the most capable poison master in the Hongyuan Empire Poison Hall only at 6-star? Not responding to the other party's question, Zhang Xian stepped forward and tapped on the other party's body several times, sealing his cultivation. He had already found the other party's weaknesses through the Library of Heaven's Path, and his Heaven's Path Shinchi had curbed the other party's movements. Thus, subduing the other party wasn't particularly difficult. After sealing the Waterleaf King's cultivation, Zhang Xian glanced at the other party's mouth and abruptly closed his hand. In the next moment, a small pill flew out from the other party's mouth, and he caught it with a wax paper. Seeing the other party retrieving the pill from his mouth, the Waterleaf King's face warped in astonishment. The pill was a final resort were he to captured by an enemy so as to prevent any secrets from leaking out. Other than the other otherworldly demon kings who were carrying out similar missions as well, no one was aware of the existence of the pill. Just who was the person before him? It was one thing to know his name, but how could the other party be aware of such a confidential secret as well? You should know what to do now. After destroying the poisonous pill in the wax paper, Zhang Xian turned his gaze back to the Waterleaf King. The Golden Leaf King and Green Leaf King had committed suicide through that pill after he subdued them the previous time around. Unwilling to allow history to repeat itself, he was prepared this time around. Speak. What is your purpose at Jinyuan City? Zhang Xian questioned grimly. You want me to betray my tribesmen? Dream on. The Waterleaf King gritted his teeth. Refusing to budge. I see. Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. He placed his finger on the other party's body and began sending a surge of Jinqi into the other party's body. Tzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. As soon as the Jinqi entered the Waterleaf King's body, he immediately felt as if his entire body had been bitten by thousands and thousands of poisonous bugs, evoking an unbearable sharp pain throughout his body. If the pain had just been limited to his body, it would still have been tolerable for him. However, that surge of Jinqi which the other party infused into his body seemed to exert an overwhelming pressure on his soul as well, threatening to rip his soul apart. You want me to submit to a lower life form like you? Impossible. Clenching his jaws tightly to bear with the pain, the Waterleaf King roared furiously. In the next moment, his body abruptly bloated up with an inflated balloon. What? Upon seeing the other party's state, Zhang Xian's face warped in shock. He quickly hastened the infusion of Jinqi, intending to suppress whatever the other party was about to do. However, in the next second, the other party's body abruptly began withering at a visible pace. Following which, a soul which bore the same form as the Waterleaf King flew out from the other party's glabella. Is this a soul? Feeling the powerful aura emanating from the soul, Zhang Xian was taken aback for a moment before his eyes narrowed in alarm. No, it isn't just a soul. It is a primordial spirit. At Saint Four-Dan Primordial Spirit Realm, a cultivator would have tempered his embryonic soul into a primordial spirit. Similar to the souls of soul oracles, primordial spirits were able to exist independently from the body. They could easily cover great distances within a short period of time, and they wielded the power to decapitate another with just a single thought. The Waterleaf King's physical body and cultivation had been suppressed by his Heaven's Path Jinqi, and in a moment of panic, he decisively abandoned his physical body and charged out in the form as his primordial spirit. However, a cultivator's primordial spirit would still be in an unstable form before reaching Saint Five Dan. A forceful separation from the body before then could potentially cause the body to die, and it would be difficult for the unstable primordial spirit to survive for extended periods of time alone as well. Even at the expense of my life, I will drag you down to the netherworld with me. Roaring frenziedly, the Waterleaf King charged at Zhang Xian savagely. Under the current circumstances, it was unlikely that he would be getting out of here alive. Since that was the case, he could very well use a companion on his trip to the netherworld. Despite the other party's mysterious means, he was only a nascent saint with a weak soul. As long as his primordial spirit were to charge into the other party's body, he would be able to tear the other party's soul into shreds easily. Who? Before Zhang Xian could react, the Waterleaf King's primordial spirit had already slipped into his glabella, causing Zhang Xian's body to freeze altogether. After entering Zhang Xian's body, the Waterleaf King was just about to devour the other party's soul when he abruptly saw a mountain-like silhouette before his eyes. Ha ha ha, I shall devour you whole the heck, what is this? The Waterleaf King's eyes widened in astonishment. Chapter 987, City Lord Manor. Without a doubt, an attack from a primordial spirit was extremely frightening. It could easily crush or even devour a soul. No matter how powerful one's defense was, it was extremely difficult to guard one's soul. This was precisely the reason why a primordial spirit realm expert was extremely frightening, far beyond that of an embryonic soul realm cultivator. When the Waterleaf King found himself poisoned and had his cultivation sealed, he knew that there was no way he would be getting out of here alive. Thus, he used a secret art to forcefully draw his primordial spirit out of his physical body, intending to devour the enemy's soul whole as his final act of valor. But when he dived into the other party's body and saw the soul within, he nearly died of shock. The other party's soul was more than 10 meters tall, and it commanded an aura of inviolable authority, reminiscent of the will of the heavens. Standing before it, he felt so pressured by the presence that it seemed like his mind would break at any moment. How could this be possible? How could anyone possibly have such a huge soul? The Waterleaf King couldn't help but fly into a hysteria. An ordinary nascent saint cultivator would have cultivated his soul, but it would only be at the elementary level of just being able to wield the power of the world. To make a comparison, it should have been nothing more than an infant before his. But what the heck was this? More than 10 meters tall, reminiscent of a massive mountain, and more importantly, there wasn't the slightest bit of coldness or energy from it. On the contrary, it even carried a radiant tinge of lightning on it. Putting aside devouring that soul, it would be a huge blessing if he could avoid being devoured by it. Could it be that the fellow before him wasn't a nascent saint but a Saint 5 Dan or even 6 Dan expert? Otherwise, how could he have such a powerful soul? He had thought that by going all out, he would at least be able to force the other party to pay a heavy price for his actions. Yet, who could have thought that the other party's soul was far stronger than his? There was no way he could match that monstrous thing before him. Why must reality be so cruel? Flee. Knowing that it was impossible for him to win, the Waterleaf King turned around and ran away without any hesitation. But before he could get away, his body suddenly froze. Following which, a massive hand wrapped around his waist, and no matter how he struggled, he couldn't break free from it. Soul search. Grabbing the primordial spirit before him, Zhang Xian uttered coldly. It would have been extremely difficult for him to kill a primordial spirit realm expert using normal means had the other party not attempted to infiltrate his body with his primordial spirit. However, since the other party had done so, the rest was simple. Flowing through his body was the incredibly powerful Heaven's Path Shinchi, and on top of that, there was a library of Heaven's Path sitting within him. Even Vicious was no match for it, so how well could a mere primordial spirit possibly fare before it? In just an instant, the other party was already screaming in agony, as if he had been dropped in a pot of oil. "Young master, don't kill that fellow. Leave his primordial spirit to me, I have a use for it." Just as Zhang Xian was about to conduct a soul search, Vicious abruptly spoke up. "Leave his primordial spirit to you?" "Yes. Consuming the primordial spirit of an otherworldly demon king can help me recover faster." At which, Vicious hurriedly added, "Don't worry, young master. I will make sure to squeeze every last bit of information that you want to know from him." "All right then." Since Vicious had guaranteed it, Zhang Xian nodded and passed the Waterleaf King's primordial spirit over to him. Leaving Vicious to be, he returned his consciousness to his physical body. Exhaling deeply, it was only then did Zhang Xian realize that he had broken out in cold sweat. In truth, he was truly in a perilous situation for a moment there. Had the Waterleaf King decided to clash with him directly instead of foolishly slipping into his body in hopes of killing him faster, there was no saying who would be the ultimate victor. While Zhang Xian's soul was indeed extremely large, it was still a little off from comparing up to a primordial spirit. After all, the difference between the two lay not just in their sizes but their level of existence as well. The only reason why Zhang Xian was able to emerge victorious was due to the overwhelming advantage he wielded in his body. It seemed like he really had to be a little bit more careful when dealing with primordial spirit realm experts in the future. Glancing at the corpse of the Waterleaf King, Zhang Xian hooked his finger, and a storage ring flew into his grasp. Immersing his consciousness within, he saw a huge mountain of treasures within. There must be at least several thousand high-tier spirit stones within the pile. Most likely, he is on some kind of mission, just like the Golden Leaf King and Green Leaf King, that's why he has so many high-tier spirit stones on him. Zhang Xian thought as his eyes lit up. Regardless of what the other party's aim was, he had definitely made a killing with this sum of high-tier spirit stones. He continued browsing through the other items in the storage ring, and there were a handful of secret manuals relating to the soul. However, just like those that the other two kings had, their content was very bizarre and vague. Casually flipping through those secret manuals, he found himself unable to make sense out of them. At that moment, a thought suddenly flashed across his mind. Compile. Compiling the soul cultivation technique manuals he had obtained from the 3 otherworldly demon kings, a new book was formed. He flipped open the new book and began browsing through it. A moment later, his eyes lit up. To think that it works. He thought that due to the innate differences between humans and the otherworldly demonic tribe, their soul cultivation techniques would be useless towards him. However, after compiling many of them together, he realized that it was still possible to form a perfect Heaven's Path soul art through it. From the looks of it, even though the soul cultivation techniques of the otherworldly demonic tribe differs from that of the humans, they are headed towards the same destination and possesses similar effects. Zhang Xian nodded in realization. The original version of the otherworldly demonic tribe's soul cultivation techniques was extremely bizarre. Based on his deduction, it was very likely that one could go berserk from cultivating it. However, thinking about it again, it might just be another different school of soul cultivation, one that was vastly different from that of the humans. There were many different schools to interpreting cultivation, but the ultimate destination was the same. Compile. Taking out the transcendent mortal 9-dan soul cultivation technique which Emo Hunsheng had given him back then, he compiled it together with the soul cultivation technique which he had just compiled earlier on. A moment later, a new book appeared before his eyes. Taking a look at it, Zhang Xian's lips curled up. He had finally perfected the transcendent mortal 9-dan Heaven's Path soul art. He had only cultivated his soul up to transcendent mortal 8-dan to date, and with this newly compiled Heaven's Path soul art, he would be able to advance his soul cultivation to transcendent mortal 9-dan, thus advancing his strength further. However, this isn't the time for that. Suppressing his urge to cultivate, Zhang Xian cleared the corpse of the Waterleaf King before releasing the restraints in the surroundings and headed towards Ink Cloud Quarter. After wasting so much time, the auction was bound to have already begun. The important matter at hand was to find the trail of the poison masters first. Right after stepping into the auction, before Zhang Xian could make sense out of the situation in there, Hu Yunsheng had already rushed up to him. Elder, the city lord has left the auction hall just a few moments ago. He left the auction hall. Zhang Xian was surprised. Yes. Before the auction for the sepulchre flower began, he suddenly turned around and left his VIP compartment. I thought that he might have some urgent matters to attend to and would be back very soon, but my men reported that he headed right back to the City Lord Manor. It seems like he has no intentions of participating in the auction anymore, but I can't help but feel that something is amiss. Hu Yunsheng frowned doubtfully. That fellow was determined to obtain the sepulchre flower previously, resorting to even forcing a trade with them. Yet, right before the auctioning of the sepulchre flower, he suddenly turned around and left. This had left Hu Yunsheng baffled. Zhang Xian was also rather perplexed by the situation as well. There was something really off about this matter. He had met the city lord for himself, and he could feel the latter's determination in obtaining the sepulchre flower. The latter had already come to the auction hall, and it was just moments before the auction of the sepulchre flower. Why would he suddenly give up at this point? Could he be planning on snatching the sepulchre flower? Zhang Xian asked. It doesn't seem too likely considering that he returned back to his city lord manor. My guess is that there might be an abrupt situation that left him no choice but to return. Hu Yunsheng pondered for a moment before replying. Zhang Xian fell into a moment of deep thought before nodding. I understand. For the time being, you should focus on running the auction and continue keeping a lookout for the poison masters. I will go and see what is going on with the city lord. The very fact that the city lord wanted the sepulchre flower, which should have only been useful to the poison masters, had already rung some warning bells in his head. For the other party to suddenly leave so hurriedly at this moment, there was probably something even deeper to the matter. This was something that deserved looking further into. All right. Hu Yunsheng nodded. The city lord manor is well guarded, and it will be dangerous to infiltrate it. Elder, do be careful. He wasn't worried about Zhang Xian's safety, but there would be no one to cure his poison should something happen to the latter. Rest assured. Zhang Xian waved his hands. He might not be a match for a primordial spirit realm otherworldly demon, but those guards of the City Lord Manor could barely be considered a threat to him. Recalling that the middle-aged man before him was not only a powerful cultivator but a poison master as well, Hu Yunsheng heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. After which, he quickly pointed out the direction of the City Lord Manor and explained its layout to the other party. As an intelligence agency, it was no surprise for InCloud Quarter to have detailed information about the blueprint and security of the City Lord Manor. Very soon, after Zhang Xian gained a decent level of understanding regarding the City Lord Manor, he began making his way over. The City Lord Manor stood at the very heart of Jingyuan City, just a few kilometers away from InCloud Quarter. Flying under the cover of the night sky, it didn't take long for a vast manor to come into sight. Recalling the intelligence which Hu Yunsheng had supplied him earlier, Zhang Xian activated his eye of insight and easily found the openings in the defensive formations and patrols. It seems like that fellow's intelligence network is pretty impressive after all. Zhang Xian chuckled under his breath before making his way in. It was only due to the extreme secrecy the Poison Hall maintained that Hu Yunsheng was unable to obtain much news regarding it. As for the other matters, InCloud Quarter's intelligence network was still of great use. With the intelligence Zhang Xian had obtained beforehand, it didn't take long for Zhang Xian to bypass the defenses of the City Lord Manor and arrive in the vicinity of the main hall, where the City Lord resided. With a nimble leap, he hid amidst a huge tree in the courtyard and secretly peeked in. Following which, he saw the City Lord pacing around the vast main hall nervously, seemingly waiting for something. The two guards that were with him were also standing on high alert, scanning their surroundings seriously. The both of you are dismissed for the time being. The City Lord waved his hand. Yes, my lord. The two guards left the main hall, and the room fell silent. The City Lord continued pacing around the room nervously, and a moment later, a unique aura suddenly permeated the room. Following which, a silhouette abruptly appeared in the room. Paying respects to the Great Lord. Upon seeing the silhouette, the City Lord heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly clasped his fist. It seemed like this was the person he was waiting for all this while. The silhouette placed his hands behind his back and nodded nonchalantly. Lord, the auction for the sepulchre flower you tasked me to purchase is about to begin. The City Lord said questioningly with a tinge of doubt in his voice. It was under the other party's orders that he was going to purchase the sepulchre flower, but just moments before the auctioning of the sepulchre flower, the other party abruptly summoned him back. He couldn't help but feel a little bewildered by the situation. Something has happened. Instead of responding to the City Lord's query, the silhouette said with a deep frown. Something has happened? The City Lord repeated uncomprehendingly. The silhouette waved his hand, and just as he was about to speak, his eyebrows suddenly shot up. Turning his gaze in the direction where Zhang Xian was hidden, he bellowed coldly, "Who is there?" Chapter 988, Lifebound Venomous Bug Boom. Following which, a powerful might fell upon the entire courtyard, including the huge tree which Zhang Xian was hidden in. Under the rampaging Jinqi, Zhang Xian felt as if his body would be torn apart. The other party has discovered me. Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes in alarm. He had made sure to conceal his presence entirely, sealing every trace of aura within his body. Even if one were to scan his area, he would only appear to be a non-living being. It was also out of confidence for his concealment ability that he chose to came here in his body instead of just his soul. Who could have thought that he would be discovered before he could do anything at all? Zhang Xian hesitated for a moment, and just as he was about to show himself, he suddenly heard two powerful gusts of wind behind him. Following which, two figures leaped into the courtyard. Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like the other party wasn't referring to him after all. Both of the two figures were dressed in dark gray clothes. One of them had a towering physique and a snowy beard. He exuded a powerful aura which hinted at the incredible strength he harnessed. The other had a relatively small build, but there was a sharp glint in his eyes which made one instinctively realize that he wouldn't be an easy person to deal with. They were both Saint 1 Dan pinnacle experts. The movement technique they used was rather uncommon, or at the very least, Zhang Xian had never seen such a movement technique before. "It's you two." Upon seeing their appearances, the eyes of the silhouette, which had been talking to the city lord, a moment ago lit up. "Indeed. And you must be the one who have been using all kinds of means to dig up news on us." With a hostile gaze, the white-beard elder narrowed his eyes. They had found that someone had been trying to track them down over the past few days, so they decided to launch a preemptive strike first. Following the trails of the culprits, they eventually found themselves at the City Lord Manor. However, they didn't think that they would be discovered shortly after entering the manor. "Ha ha ha, I have searched far and wide for you but to no avail, but who could have thought that you will end up knocking on my doorstep instead? Since you are already here, don't even think about leaving anymore." The silhouette sneered coldly as he spread his palm open and thrust it downward. "Hong Long." In the next moment, the air in the surroundings seemed to have turned incredibly viscous, and an overwhelming aura crushed down on the entire manor. It seemed like a powerful formation had been activated. "Shit, it is a trap." In that instant, the faces of the two men turned livid. It couldn't be clearer to them at this moment that the other party had intentionally lured them into this manner so as to trap them with the formation. "Ha ha ha, you realized it too late." With a cold smile, the silhouette lifted his palm and thrust it forward forcefully. Boom! A powerful burst of might shot forth towards the taller man, tearing a long gorge of a meter in width along its path. Jia, even the formation shook violently before that powerful might, ready to collapse at any moment. That silhouette man is a Saint 4 Dan expert too. On the tree, Zhang Xian's face turned grim. To his astonishment, the silhouette man was also a primordial spirit realm expert, just like the Waterleaf King. Even in Qingyuan conferred empire, primordial spirit realm experts were individuals who stood at the peak of the pyramid. Why would so many of them suddenly appear in a remote location like Jinyuan City? Flaws. Seeing that the other party was in the midst of executing his battle technique, Zhang Xian willed without any hesitation, and a book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path. Placing his fingers on the book, he swiftly flipped it open. Violet Leaf King, one of the Qingtian 10 Great Kings. There was a short introduction at the front, followed by all kinds of flaws afterwards. Violet Leaf King. He is one of the 10 Great Kings as well. Zhang Xian was taken aback. He didn't think that the silhouette man would also be an otherworldly demon king, just like the 3 fellows he had dealt with previously. He had already eliminated 3 of the Qingtian 10 Great Kings. If their leader were to learn about it, would the other party skin him alive? Elder Su. While Zhang Xian was astonished by what he was reading, the shorter of the 2 men hurriedly rushed forward with his palm raised, choosing to face the devastating attack in place of the taller man. Boom! As the 2 mights collided, the face of the shorter man paled, and he was sent flying in the next moment. While in the air, blood spurted uncontrollably from his mouth. The powerful life force he harnessed a moment ago vanished instantaneously as if a popped balloon. By the time he crashed heavily onto the ground, the final breath had already escaped from his body. He was actually killed in a single palm. Zhang Xian clenched his fists tightly in astonishment. Upon reaching Saint Realm, there would be a qualitative evolution in one's level of existence. One's physical resilience would be enhanced significantly, allowing one to survive a greater extent of damage. The shorter man's cultivation was at Saint 1 Dan pinnacle, and yet, he was killed on the spot with just a single palm. Was this the true strength of a primordial spirit realm expert? But thinking about it, that was to be expected. At primordial spirit realm, one's comprehension of the world had already reached an unfathomable level. The reason why Zhang Xian was able to kill 3 of them previously was through utilizing various different means to overwhelm them. In truth, not once had he clashed with them at all. If you were to really engage a primordial spirit realm expert in a direct confrontation, not even 5 of him combined would even be sufficient to phase the other party. Elder Shui. Seeing that his companion had been killed while trying to save him, the face of the white-bearded elder, Elder Su, warped in fury. He turned his gaze towards the silhouette before him with killing intent raging in his eyes. Flicking his hand, he took out a small jade bottle and opened it. A black-colored beetle with a golden hue on its mouth flew out from the bottle. Weng weng weng. The beetle was only around the size of a fingernail, but it flew at an incredible speed. Its fluttering wings produced a particularly unnerving sound. Biting his finger, Elder Su dripped a droplet of blood on the beetle. Tzzzzzzz. Upon seeing fresh blood, the beetle excitedly opened its mouth and gulped it clean within 2 mouthfuls. Following which, a brilliant silver glow emanated from its body, as if a certain ability of it had been activated. Could that be a venomous bug? Zhang Xian frowned. He had read quite a few books relating to poison back on the Red Lotus Mountain Range Poison Hall, and there were some records relating to poison masters nurturing venomous bugs using their own blood. Such bugs were capable to producing frightening poison whenever fed with human blood. To possess a venomous bug, could it be that the both of them are poison masters? Zhang Xian's eyes lit up in excitement. His purpose for coming to Jingyuan City was to find the Poison Hall, but to do so, he would require the guide of the Poison Masters. However, to conceal themselves from the Master-Teacher Pavilion, the Poison Masters often moved in secrecy, never appearing in public view. As such, it was nigh impossible to find them. This was also the reason why Zhang Xian could only resort to the sepulchre flower to lure them in. Yet, who could have thought that he would meet them here? From the looks of it now, it seems like the reason why the city lord is determined to obtain the sepulchre flower is to lure the poison masters out as well. At this point, Zhang Xian also came to a realization as well. Judging from the current state of affairs, it seemed like the city lord was under the command of the otherworldly demon kings, and he was acting on their behalf. But why would the otherworldly demonic tribe be interested in finding the poison hall? Perplexed, Zhang Xian turned to Elder Su, and a corresponding book on the latter materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path. The Grand Elder of the Hongyuan Empire Poison Hall, 6-star Pinnacle Poison Master. The other party's identity was clearly written in the book. Just like what Zhang Xian had guessed, the other party was indeed one of the elders of the Poison Hall. While Zhang Xian was still analyzing the situation, the venomous bug finally had its fill of blood. With a light silver glow on its body, it flew straight for the Violet Leaf King. Do you really think that a mere silver armor venomous beetle will suffice against me? You sure are underestimating me. Sneering coldly, the Violet Leaf King raised his palm and struck at the beetle. Hula! An incredible surge of fiery Jinqi burst forth, threatening to burn the beetle down to ashes. However, the latter was simply too nimble. It dodged the Violet Leaf King's attack with ease and headed towards the aerial space right above him. With the fluttering of its wings, it scattered a pile of silver powder all around. Humph! The Violet Leaf King flung his sleeves and swept the silver powder away. At the same, he shot bursts of sword chi from his fingertips towards the beetle. Tzzzzzz. The sword chi traversed through space at an incredible speed, but the beetle was even quicker. As it treaded around the bursts of sword chi, it continuously released a unique gas. Not too far away, the city lord inadvertently breathed in a mouthful of it. His face immediately paled, and his body began wobbling weakly before falling to the ground. Just by breathing in a mouthful of the gas, he was already incapacitated by the poison. Not too bad, you do have some tricks up your sleeves. Seeing the city lord falling to the ground, on the verge of dying at any moment, the Violet Leaf King's complexion finally turned grim. With an abrupt twist of its body, it created a thin energy barrier around it, warding off the poisonous powder and gas from the beetle. That venomous bug is formidable, but it is still impossible for it to defeat the Violet Leaf King. Looking closely at the battle, Zhang Xian shook his head. Even though his current strength was far beneath the Violet Leaf King, he could still determine the flow of the battle precisely with his sharp eye of discernment. The venomous bug which Elder Su had released was indeed formidable, unmatched by cultivators of the same cultivation as him. However, it was still a little too weak to poison a Saint 4 Dan expert to death. Putting everything aside, just the fact that the Violet Leaf King hadn't even used the prowess of his primordial spirit once ever since the very start of the battle clearly displayed the difference in the differing positions of both sides. Primordial spirits were capable of conducting attacks on one's soul directly, and it was the strongest offensive mean of Saint 4 Dan experts. On top of that, despite the potency of the beetle's poison, it was unable to breach the latter's defenses. With this, the victor of the battle was already clear. As expected, after seeing through the moves of the beetle, the Violet Leaf King decided to end the battle there and then. With a light chuckle, a powerful force burst forth from his glabella. Kneel down. Boom! The voice was deafening, reminiscent of thunder. Upon hearing the voice, the flying beetle suddenly began wobbling unstably, as if intoxicated. Pooh! Not too far away, Elder Su also spurted a mouthful of blood, as if he had been struck by the soul attack as well. Could it be a life-bound venomous bug? Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up. A life-bound venomous bug could be considered as the clone of a poison master. By feeding a bug with one's blood essence frequently, one could infuse a portion of his soul into the bug's soul, thus further enhancing the strength of the bug and one's control over it. However, should one's life-bound venomous bug die, one would incur severe damage or even die on the spot. I see, no wonder your beetle is so formidable. So it is a life-bound venomous bug. Naturally, the Violet Leaf King also realized the same. With a light chuckle, he swiftly grabbed it with his hand. G. The beetle's movement was already hindered from the soul attack it suffered earlier, so it was unable to dodge from the Violet Leaf King's hand at all. Trapped, it struggled desperately, but it was unable to escape at all. If you were a little stronger, this thing might still be able to threaten me. But in your current state, dream on. The Violet Leaf King flicked his finger lightly at the beetle, and under the impact, Elder Su staggered weakly, and his face paled further. Poison masters may be formidable, and the poison they concocted were extremely difficult to guard against, but ultimately, Elder Su was only a Saint 1 Dan pinnacle cultivator. It was too difficult a feat for him to kill a Saint 4 Dan otherworldly demon king. Bring me to the poison hall, and I can consider sparing your life. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what will happen to you. Grabbing the beetle tightly in his hands, the Violet Leaf King looked at Elder Su coldly, the killing intent in his eyes unconcealed. This is a good opportunity for me. Seeing that the Violet Leaf King would make a move any time soon, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. If he could save Elder Su, he could very well earn the latter's trust. If so, there would be a good chance he would be able to convince the latter to bring him to the poison hall. This was far more reliable than capturing a poison master and interrogating him. Just that how could he save the other party from the hands of a Saint 4 Dan otherworldly demon king? A deep frown emerged on Zhang Xian's forehead. Chapter 989, Poison Match. His current cultivation was only at nascent Saint Pinnacle. Even though he could subdue even Saint 2 Dan cultivators easily due to the various means he possessed, he was still too weak from matching up to a primordial spirit realm opponent. If he were to intervene without a feasible plan, there was a very good chance he could be killed. At the moment, the best weapon he had against a primordial spirit realm opponent was his Heaven's Path Shinchi. If he could sneak his Heaven's Path Shinchi into the other party's body and poison him, there was a good chance that he could emerge victorious in the confrontation. However, considering the alert state the Violet Leaf King was in at the moment, it didn't seem like there was any good way to do so. However, my goal is to save Elder Su, not to kill the Violet Leaf King. This will be significantly easier. As long as I can find a way to win the Violet Leaf King's trust, I should be able to find an opportunity to approach Elder Su and take him to safety, Zhang Xian thought. The true difficulty in this mission lay in winning Elder Su's trust. In truth, he could have easily stalled the Violet Leaf King by sending his otherworldly demon puppets at the latter, thus earning him time to save Elder Su. However, that would effectively dash his hopes of having Elder Su bring him to the Poison Hall. Besides, the reason why he was able to defeat the 3 otherworldly demon kings was because he had managed to catch them off guard. On the other hand, considering the coincidental timing which the City Lord had returned, there seemed to be a very good chance that the Violet Leaf King had somehow learned of the Waterleaf King's death. If so, the Violet Leaf King would surely be on his guard, making it hard for him to deal with the other party. Wait a moment. Perhaps, I can try working on him from the Waterleaf King's side. A thought suddenly flashed across Zhang Xian's mind. The Waterleaf King and the Violet Leaf King were both members of the Qingtian 10 Great Kings, and it was definitely no coincidence for the both of them to appear at Jingyuan City simultaneously. It was very likely that they were here for the same purpose. In other words, both of them were tasked with the mission of finding the Poison Hall. This would also explain why the Waterleaf King had headed to the auction hall to obtain the Sepulchre Flower before being killed by him. Alright, I should just give it a try then. Glancing at the situation beneath, Elder Su was in a perilous situation. He could very well lose his life any moment now. Zhang Xian knew that there was no time for him to think the matter through, and he had to act swiftly. Thus, he nimbly leaped back down to the ground. There was a formation around the courtyard which prevented one from entering and leaving. However, with Zhang Xian's deep understanding of formations, he was capable of treading in and out of the formation without alerting anyone. Very soon, he managed to sneak out of the formation. He swiftly warped his bones and muscles, transforming his appearance into that of one of the 2 guards that were by the Waterleaf King's side back then. After that was done, he clasped his fist and reported loudly, "City Lord, bad news. The elder whom you have instructed us to protect has been killed. The culprit is a 7-star master teacher, and he is currently making his way here. The person who killed the Waterleaf King is a 7-star master teacher." As those words were spoken, the formation surrounding the courtyard vanished, and a figure appeared before Zhang Xian's face. The figure was the Violet Leaf King. He was still firmly holding onto the beetle in his hand, keeping Elder Su in check. On the other hand, Elder Su was lying feebly on the ground, severely wounded. Zhang Xian was visibly surprised by the sudden appearance of the man before him before hurriedly nodding, "Yes, Elder." "What happened?" "Explain everything in detail to me," the Violet Leaf King ordered grimly. As comrades working on the same mission, he had a jade token which indicated the present condition of the Waterleaf King. Just a moment ago, the jade token shattered, which meant that something must have happened to the Waterleaf King. As such, he hurriedly returned back to the City Lord Manor and summoned the City Lord back to have the other party look into the matter. Upon meeting the guard who had escorted the Waterleaf King to the auction, he couldn't help but question him anxiously. Earlier, when the elder was going to enter the auction hall, someone claiming to be his old friend stopped him and offered him a cup of wine. After chatting for a while, the elder proposed for the both of them to head to a tavern to have a drink together, and he ordered us not to follow him. As such, I am not too sure what happened afterwards. However, when I finally saw the elder once more, he was already dead. According to the accounts from eyewitnesses, it was the doing of a 7-star master teacher. Zhang Xian had mixed the truth with falsehood, making it nigh impossible for the other party to ascertain the authenticity of his words in the short term. And what Zhang Xian was banking on was this short term. As long as he could convince the other party of his identity, he would be able to slip into the manor and escape with Elder Su, 7-star master teacher. Finding no apparent flaws in the other party's words, the Violet Leaf King frowned. How could any 7-star master teacher appear in a city as remote as Jingyuan City? And why would the other party make a move against the Waterleaf King too? He was confident that there was no one who would be able to see through their disguise, not even 7-star master teachers. However, if the culprit wasn't a 7-star master teacher, considering the Waterleaf King's strength, there was indeed no one in Jingyuan City who would be able to kill him. I have no idea too. Zhang Xian said. I only saw the elder's corpse when I arrived, so I brought it over. After saying those words, Zhang Xian flicked his wrist, and the withered corpse of the Waterleaf King appeared on the ground. This is ignition of primordial spirit. He attempted to forcefully withdraw his primordial spirit. The Violet Leaf King narrowed his eyes in alarm. As a fellow otherworldly demon king, he could tell that the Waterleaf King had died due from using their secret art to withdraw one's primordial spirit forcefully. Once it was used, one would die without fail. Just how powerful an enemy did he encounter that he would have to resort to this? Could he have really met a 7-star master teacher? If that was the case, they would really be in deep trouble. It would be difficult for even him to escape from a master teacher of that caliber. This won't do. I have to get the location of the poison hall out from that fellow right now. Alarmed, the Violet Leaf King dared not to waste any time. He hurriedly turned his gaze back to Elder Su, but what he saw left a deep frown on his forehead. What are you doing? The guard, who had just reported the matter regarding the Waterleaf King to him earlier, had walked up to Elder Su at some point in time, seemingly trying to help the latter up. Nothing much. I just think that his wounds are a little severe, so I wondered if he needed any help. Zhang Xian replied with an awkward smile. You are not needed here, back down. Seeing how a guard dared to overstep his place, the Violet Leaf King's face darkened. Yes. Nodding, Zhang Xian took 2 steps backward while pulling Elder Su's body with him before abruptly stomping on the ground. All of a sudden, the paused formation whirred into life once more, bringing the thick layer of mist back around the courtyard. What? Alarmed, the Violet Leaf King immediately rushed forward. However, he soon found himself lost within the formation which he could traverse through easily a few moments ago, as if someone had altered its structure. At this rate, that 2 fellows would escape before he was able to find them. In this instant, he realized that he had been tricked. The guard had used the Waterleaf King's corpse to distract him. Damn it! With a savage look on his face, killing intent began spilling forth from the Violet Leaf King's body. In the blink of an eye, he reverted back to his otherworldly demon form. He thrust his palm forward and struck the formation. He was intending to break the formation down using brute force. With his prowess as a Saint 4 Dan expert, destroying the formation of a grade 6 pinnacle formation posed no difficulty at all. Zhang Xian took a glance at the overburdened formation around him before quickly turning to the debilitated elder before him and asked, Elder Su, are you fine? Who are you? Elder Su asked doubtfully. I am a poison master, but this isn't a good time for us to talk about that. We have to escape right now, or else we might very well die here. While speaking, the formation shook violently once more, seemingly on the verge of collapsing. Poison Master. Elder Su frowned. However, after a brief moment of hesitation, he eventually nodded and said, Indeed, this isn't the place for us to talk. We can discuss about the matter once we get out. Zhang Xian nodded. I have been in the City Lord Manor for some time now, so I am rather familiar with its layout and formations. Elder Su, follow me. After saying those words, he quickly rushed off in a certain direction. On the other hand, Elder Su took out a pill and swallowed it. His ghastly pale complexion finally regained a slight red tinge to it. After which, he got to his feet and quickly followed the other party's footsteps. He did harbor some doubts towards the other party's identity as a poison master, but given the circumstances they were in, he had little choice but to follow him. The other party was his only hope out at the moment. Following behind the other party, they swiftly made their way out of the courtyard before skillfully maneuvering around the City Lord Manor. While making their way out, Elder Su realized that not only did the other party have a deep understanding of the layout of the City Lord Manor, he had a frightening grasp of the formations in the area as well. With just a light tap or kick, he could easily activate the many unactivated formations throughout the manor, stalling the tightly pursuing Violet Leaf King. Not too long later, they managed to make their way out of the City Lord Manor. They swiftly flew away while keeping their bodies close to the surface. This would make it harder for the Violet Leaf King to find them, thus buying them even more time to get to safety. After flying for around 20 breaths, they finally stopped before a vast building. This is in Cloud Quarter. Elder Su was taken aback. He had long heard of the famous Ink Cloud Quarter of Jingyuan City, and he had even been here quite a few times himself. They were still being pursued by their enemies, so why would the other party bring him here all of the sudden? Our enemies control the City Lord Manor. If we were to escape right now, regardless of where we escape, it won't take long for their men to find and capture us, especially considering the state of injury you are in. Thus, it will be better for us to find a place to hide and recuperate at first. Noticing the doubts in Elder Su's eyes, Zhang Xian explained. You're right. Elder Su nodded in agreement. The other party was right. Jingyuan City was located amidst a snowy plain, so there was no cover they could make use of beyond the city. If they were to attempt to escape now, it was very likely that they would be spotted by the men of the City Lord Manor. If so, there was a good chance they might find themselves cornered. On top of possessing a deep understanding of formations, the other party was a particularly intelligent person as well. With such thoughts in mind, he followed the other party into Ink Cloud Quarter. Turning at several bends, he soon found himself standing before a chamber. The chamber was embedded with a formation that could isolate all auras within. This should help us hide from them for a while, Zhang Xian said as he stepped into the chamber. This was the same place where he taught Hu Yunsheng a lesson previously. Considering the elaborate security measures implemented on the chamber, it was the most apt for the current situation they were in. Elder Su nodded as he entered the chamber. Instead of going straight into recuperating from his injuries, he turned his gaze towards Zhang Xian instead, and with a sharp glint in his eyes, he asked, You said that you are a poison master. Do you have an emblem to ascertain your identity? Honestly speaking, it was a little hard for him to believe that the nascent saint cultivator before him had managed to save him from the clutches of a Saint For Dan expert so easily. There was a chance that the both of them were in cahoots with one another, and they were intentionally putting up this show to convince him to bring them to the poison hall. I don't have an emblem. Zhang Xian shook his head. I have been studying poison by myself so far, so I haven't taken any poison master examination yet. You haven't taken any poison master examination yet? Elder Su's face darkened. Do you think that it is possible to study poison by oneself? You might be able to fool amateurs with those words, but do you honestly expect me to believe the words you are speaking? To become a master in the way of poison, one would have to examine and study the properties of all kinds of poison. The slightest bit of mistake could lead to death, and even under the guidance of a teacher, it wasn't uncommon for poison masters to accidentally poison themselves to death. Yet, the fellow before him was saying that he had been studying poison by himself? He must be joking. I knew that you wouldn't believe it. Seeing the other party's expression, Zhang Xian shook his head bitterly and said, Honestly speaking, there is no way I can really explain it to you. Since that's the case, why don't you have a poison match with me? If you were to win, it goes without saying that I will die in your hands. On the other hand, if I win, I hope that you can bring me to the poison hall so that I can officially take the poison master examination. You wish to have a poison match with me? Elder Su looked at the young man before him with narrowed eyes. In truth, the possession of an emblem wasn't a clear indicator of one's identity either. After all, the enemy could always kill a poison master and steal his emblem over. The only reliable method to identify a poison master was through his usage of poison. If the other party was really capable of wielding poison as a weapon, he had to be a real poison master. There was no way to fake that. All right then. Elder Su nodded. Chapter 990, Tastes Not Bad, How Should We Conduct the Match? You can determine the rules. Hearing the other party agree to it, Zhang Xian said. Considering the other party's temperament, it was very likely that the other party wouldn't spill the location of the poison hall under threat, even if he were to have him killed. Besides, there was no way he could guarantee that the other party wouldn't give him a fake location to do him in. Furthermore, it was likely that he would require the poison hall's help for Wei Ruin's condition. It was best for him not to get on bad terms with them. As such, the best way to go around doing so was to convince the other party that he was a poison master and have the other party bring him there personally. Very well. In my current conditions, I am unable to concoct poison, but I do have a few poisons in my possession. I will allow you to pick from any of them, and if you are able to neutralize the poison contained in it, I will acknowledge that you are a poison master. Elder Su contemplated for a moment before flicking his wrist, and 8 different ceramic jars appeared before him. There were no labels on any of the jars, and each of them was thoroughly sealed. It was impossible to tell what was stored within from the outside. Nevertheless, through his eye of insight, Zhang Xian was able to clearly sense the tremendous toxicity contained within each of the ceramic jars. It felt as if opening the seal on any of them could bring great bloodshed upon an area. Just like medicinal herbs, it was possible for potent poison to gain spirit. Once it was released, it could result in a devastating calamity if there was no antidote to curb it. This was precisely the reason why poison masters were feared by all other occupations. These are grade 6 pinnacle poisons, Zhang Xian remarked. The poisons contained within the ceramic jars were very potent, only paling slightly in comparison to the beetle from before. Indeed, these are all grade 6 pinnacle poisons. You can freely choose from any of them. As long as you are able to concoct an antidote to one within 2 hours, I will acknowledge that you are a poison master. Elder Su said. All right. Zhang Xian nodded. Without any hesitation, he picked up the first ceramic jar, opened it, and lowered his head to examine what was within. On the other hand, upon seeing Zhang Xian's movements, Elder Su's face darkened. Poison masters had a unique series of steps in order to assess a poison so as to avoid being poisoned themselves, especially when they were unsure about the nature of the poison. Yet, the fellow before him was clearly ignorant of it. To be smelling the content of the jars as if he was savoring good wine, was he really that courageous, or did he have no knowledge of poison at all? Even a 3-star poison master would know better than to do something so reckless. Just as Elder Su thought that the other party would be incapacitated by the poison gas emanating from the ceramic jars, he saw the other party pour out a pile of poison from one of the jars onto his hand and dabbed it with his finger. Huge veins bulged out on Elder Su's temples. The other party was seeking death. Most grade 6 pinnacle poisons were capable of seeping through one's skin. If the poison were to seep into one's meridians and reach the organs, even a Saint 2 Dan expert could potentially face fatality, let alone a nascent saint cultivator. Where in the world would one find another poison master assessing poisons in such a manner? If this was really how poison masters assessed poison, just how many of them would die each time the poison hall wanted to examine a new concoction or medicinal herb? Come a few rounds of that, and poison masters would have gone extinct themselves even without the master teachers making a move. Shaking his head, Elder Su was wondering whether he should intervene and save the young man before him when the other party suddenly took out a white cloth and placed it neatly before his chest. After which, the other party adjusted his posture upright, reminiscent of a dignified gentleman preparing himself for his meal. Following that, he took out a spoon and scooped the poison powder on his palm before gracefully lifting it up to his mouth. Upon seeing this sight, Elder Su nearly keeled over. He thought that it was already foolish for one to come into contact with poison barehanded, but, consuming it directly? Are you tired of living? More importantly, that white cloth before your chest, the upright posture, and that spoon, what the heck are you doing? You are here to create an antidote to my poison, not to dine on it. Elder Su couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. He immediately flicked his wrist to take out the antidote so as to treat the other party, but before he could make a move, he saw the other party smack his lips before looking at him in discontentment. Elder Su, the poison you concoct is appalling. Its texture is disgusting, and the taste is truly horrendous. There is no one in the world who will be willing to try it a second time. Fail. Hearing those words, Elder Su nearly collapsed to the ground. Brother, that's a poison over there, not food. You are supposed to die right after eating it. Who in the world will be able to give it a second try? Fail your head. Those who have eaten the poison will be too caught up in the fear of imminent death, who would still have the energy to bother about the taste. Just as he was thinking whether the world had gone mad, the other party moved on to open the second ceramic jar, scooped out a spoonful of the poison within, and placed it in his mouth. The taste is still acceptable, but if you can stir-fry it for a little longer, the texture will be even better. After which, the other party moved on to the third jar. This is a little too sweet. Did you add honey in there? Hi, I happen to really dislike honey. You should consider adding Chinese licorice in place of honey the next time you concoct it. This one will be better if you dissolve it in water. However, it will still be a little viscous and gooey, so you will have to pay more attention to its presentation to make it more appetizing. As for the taste, if you were to pair it with some barbecued meat and fine wine, I still might try eating one bowl. Anything more, and it might be a little too heavy. Personally, I don't really like to eat such gooey food. After tasting each poison, Zhang Xian would appraise it earnestly. Elder Su tugged at his hair in a frenzy. The grade 6 pinnacle poisons which he concocted were capable of killing even Saint 1 Dan pinnacle experts easily, so how could the other party be eating them so leisurely, as if they were delicacies? Could his poisons have lost their effectiveness due to being stored for too long? But that shouldn't be possible. Perplexed, Elder Su picked up a jar which the other party had eaten from previously, dabbed his finger in it, and placed it into his mouth. Pooh! As soon as the poison seeped into his throat, he immediately spurted a mouthful of blood, and his body began trembling uncontrollably. A sharp pain tore through his entire body, and he felt as if all of his meridians had burst simultaneously. Astonished, he swiftly took out the antidote and swallowed it. It took a moment before the unbearable pain finally receded. With a twitching face, he turned his gaze towards the young man, who was still in the midst of tasting his poisons not too far away, with a look of daze. Very soon, the other party was done testing all 8 jars of poisons. However, he still had a look of reverie on his face, as if he hadn't gotten enough of it yet. How is it? Unable to bear it any longer, Elder Su asked. The other party nodded earnestly and replied, as expected of grade 6 pinnacle poisons, their flavors are indeed not bad. Right, for the last 2 poison, if you could make them a little crispier, the overall culinary experience for the diner could be elevated. Elder Su's body stiffened. He had spent a lifetime of effort and devotion to concocting these poisons, and he thought that he had become an unrivaled force in Tier 1 empires with them. Yet, who could have thought that they would end up being savored by a nascent saint cultivator as if they were desserts? Not to mention, he was even criticized for the lacking taste. The heck, these are really all lethal poisons that can kill any man easily. I really am a poison master, a very formidable poison master. I am not a confectioner. Ignoring the other party's sudden insanity streak, Zhang Xian shook his head. In truth, he wasn't doing all of those actions intentionally. Due to his heaven's pathshinchi, those poisons were completely ineffective against him. It took a taste for him to realize that there were many flaws with them that should be corrected. For one, since the poison was meant to be consumed, its flavor should at least be good so as to lessen the pain of the victim before his death. Cough cough. Are you really fine? You ate so many poisons. A while later, seeing how the fellow before him was still relishing in the taste of his poisons, not showing the slightest sign of being poisoned, Elder Su asked with twitching lips. I am fine. Zhang Xian finally recovered from his trance. How is it? Is this sufficient to confirm that I am a poison master? Of course. If this isn't sufficient to confirm that you are a poison master, nothing else can. Elder Su shook his head with a bitter smile on his lips. When he first heard that the other party had learned poison by himself, he thought that the other party was spouting nonsense. However, after seeing the other party devouring his poisons as if they were mere snacks, he immediately realized that he was mistaken. Possessing a physique that was immune to poison, the other party could test any poison out on himself without any fear. Given so, it was indeed possible for him to have learned poison on his own. I'm relieved. Alright, you should hurry up and heal your wounds first. I'm afraid that we won't be able to hide from those fellows for too long here. Seeing that the other party had finally acknowledged him, Zhang Xian nodded and said. While this chamber was capable of isolating aura, it wouldn't keep the Violet Leaf King away from them forever. It was just a matter of time before he came knocking. They had to swiftly flee from Jingyuan City and head to the Poison Hall. Understanding that logic, Elder Su nodded before taking out a couple of medicinal herbs from his storage ring and concocting it into a medicinal fluid. After he was done, he swallowed it. His means of dealing with his wounds differed significantly from those of physicians and apothecaries. The latter aimed to nourish the deficiencies in one's bodies, whereas the former utilized poison to stimulate one's body, forcing one's jinqi to circulate faster and hasten the recovery. Two different methods with the same aims. It was impossible to say which was more effective than the other, but medicine strengthened one's core, allowing one to reach a greater height in the future. On the other hand, while poison might stimulate one's body potential in the short term, but it could very well hurt one's foundations, limiting one's future achievements. Seeing that Elder Su needed some time to recuperate, Zhang Xian silently left the chamber before reverting back to his form as Sun Chang to look for Hu Yunsheng. Elder, just a moment ago, the city lord has let out news that anyone who dares to compete for the sepulchre flower will be considered as an enemy of the city lord manor. As a result, no one dared to bid for it during the auction. Shall I conduct another round of publicity and hold the auction a few days later? Upon seeing Zhang Xian, Hu Yunsheng immediately reported with an awkward look. Due to the news released by the city lord, most of the interested buyers dared not make a move for fear of making an enemy out of the city lord manor. As a result, despite all of the other goods being successfully auctioned off, the sepulchre flower remained untouched by any. There's no need for that. Zhang Xian waved his hand. Since he had already found a poison master, there was no need for him to auction the sepulchre flower anymore. Yes. Hu Yunsheng nodded before passing the jade box containing the sepulchre flower over to Zhang Xian. Zhang Xian took the jade box, and just as he was about to speak, a huge group of people suddenly walked over to them. The person leading the group was the person whom Zhang Xian had just fled from at the City Lord Manor, the Violet Leaf King. At this moment, the Violet Leaf King had already reverted back to his human form. Without using the Eye of Insight, it was nigh impossible to see through his disguise. Boss Hu, this is an esteemed guest of the City Lord Manor, Elder Violet Leaf. Something very important to him has been stolen just a moment ago, and we suspect that the thief is hiding in Inkcloud Quarter. Thus, we hope to conduct a search here. I hope that you can cooperate with our investigation. A guard walked over and clasped his fist. You wish to conduct a search in my Inkcloud Quarter? Hu Yunsheng's face darkened as a deep frown appeared on his forehead. In his view, the other party was simply making up a story to forcefully snatch the sepulchre flower from them after failing to obtain it in the auction. Indeed. I hope that you won't hinder our investigation efforts, or else we will have no choice but suspect that Inkcloud Quarter is colluding with the thief. The guard spoke with a threatening edge in his voice. Hearing those words, Hu Yunsheng felt so angry that his entire face turned crimson with rage. The guard was blatantly threatening him to his face. Yet, there was nothing he could do about the situation, so Hu Yunsheng fell silent, not knowing how he should respond. At that moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Something very important has been stolen. Indeed, it is understandable why one would be anxious after losing something important to him. May we know what the item is? Perhaps, we might be able to offer some help to you. Turning around, Hu Yunsheng saw Elder Sun Chang speaking with an earnest smile on his lips. Chapter 991, The Crazed Violet Leaf King. His sincerity seemed to have come from the depths of his heart. It carried a natural charm that compelled the trust of others, leaving others unable to doubt him. The item is not important. What is more important is the two thieves who stole from the City Lord Manor. If they aren't captured, what will become of the authority and dignity of Jingyuan City? Seemingly infected by the earnesty of the other party, the guard replied. Indeed. One who dares to steal from the City Lord Manor must be severely punished for his actions. Zhang Xian exclaimed vehemently in agreement. However, I feel that it won't do for you to continue searching in such an open manner. If the other party is truly hidden here, he would have realized that you are in the vicinity and quickly make his escape. Why don't you allow Boss Hu to activate the formations in the surroundings first so that the enemy has nowhere to escape? This way, we will have all the time to search for the two thieves. The guard dared not make a decision, so he turned his gaze towards the Violet Leaf King to seek his approval. After a moment of hesitation, the Violet Leaf King nodded in approval. Those two fellows have a deep understanding of formations, so it will be best if you can activate the strongest formation of your in-cloud quarter. Otherwise, the both of them will still be able to get away easily. That fellow who saved Elder Su was able to alter and activate the formation in the courtyard within moments after coming into contact with it. This was a feat which even he was incapable of accomplishing. From this in itself, it could be seen that the other party had a deep understanding of the way of formations. As such, it was unlikely that ordinary formations would be able to stop him. He's so formidable. I see it is fortunate that I have a powerful formation plate in my possession. I will activate it right now. With a smile, Zhang Xian said. A formation plate? The Violet Leaf King frowned. Yes, I obtained it while I was on an expedition a while ago. It's a grade 7 formation, so I don't really have much of a chance to use it usually. Since the two scoundrels you speak of are so formidable, I feel that it will be safer to use it. Zhang Xian nodded. Grade 7. The Violet Leaf King's eyes lit up. It would be difficult for even an expert of his tier to escape from a formation plate of that grade. Who could have thought that the lowly in-cloud quarter would actually have such a treasure amongst them? It was no wonder they had so many treasures to auction. It really shouldn't be underestimated just because it was located in a remote city. That's right. Zhang Xian nodded as he flicked his wrist. A formation plate appeared in his palm. Infusing Jinqi into it, a loud buzz sounded in the air as dense mist swiftly filled the surroundings. Incredible. The Violet Leaf King nodded in approval. It was a simple beguilement formation, but it was extremely stable. Even if he were to exert his full strength, it would take at least 10 minutes or so for him to break free. If it was used against a Saint 2 Dan or 3 Dan cultivator, there was no way the other party would be able to escape from it. After I capture those two fellows later on, I should grab this formation plate as well. A cold glint flashed across the Violet Leaf King's eyes. As an otherworldly demon, he harbored a deep-seated hatred for the humans. Once those two fellows were found, there would be no need for him to put up an appearance before the other party anymore. Naturally, the first thing he should do then was to get that formation plate from the other party. If he had such a formation plate back in the City Lord Manor, those two fellows wouldn't have been able to escape in the first place. This formation is not too bad. Alright, bring our men to search for them. The Violet Leaf King waved his hand and said. Under the effects of the formation, if those two escapees were really at in-cloud quarter, there was no way they would be able to escape. However, considering the thickness of the mist, there was no way their men would be able to maneuver around the formation easily. They would require a guide to bring them around. All right. Zhang Xian nodded before instructing, Hu Yunsheng, bring our friends from the City Lord Manor to take a look around. Right, bring some fine wine over as well. I will be sitting here with Elder Violet Leaf here, awaiting the results of the search. Yes. Even though Hu Yunsheng had no idea why elder son Cheng was obeying the orders of the city lord manor, he could tell that the other party had an idea in mind. Thus, he nodded his head before leading the guards away. Where they advanced, the mist would automatically part, as if someone was leading them around. It will suffice to find the two thieves as soon as possible. There is no need to prepare wine or that sort. The Violet Leaf King waved his hand impatiently. That won't do. You are a person whom even our city lord has to address as elder. It is only right for us to offer a grand welcome to someone as esteemed as you. Zhang Xian smiled courteously. As the person controlling the formation plate, he could easily manipulate where the guards were heading to with his thoughts, so he need not fear them finding Elder Su. Not too long later, Zhu Xiao carried a tray of alcohol and side dishes in. Elder, please. Zhang Xian poured a cup of wine out politely and offered it to the Violet Leaf King earnestly. The Violet Leaf King was initially reluctant to drink, but facing the other party's clear eyes and earnest gesture, he eventually nodded in agreement and took the cup. Even so, he still extended his spiritual perception to the wine to check on it. A moment later, he heaved a sigh of relief. A hint of embarrassment surfaced in his eyes. After checking on the content of the wine, he realized that there was no problem with it. The other party was earnestly offering him a cup of wine, but he actually ended up viewing the kind gesture with skepticism. Raising his gaze, he saw that the middle-aged man opposite to him had already gulped down the cup of fine wine before him. Is the wine not to your liking? Men, bring us another bottle of. Seeing that the other party wasn't drinking, Zhang Xian asked worriedly. There is no need for that. The Violet Leaf King raised his hand to stop the other party before gulping down the cup of wine heartily. In his view, it was a mere cup of wine, so there was no harm drinking it. Putting aside the fact that he had already ascertained that there was no poison contained within the wine, even if it had been spiked, with his powerful cultivation, he would surely be able to suppress it easily. Good. Seeing the Violet Leaf King gulp down the wine, Zhang Xian nodded in satisfaction. You are indeed straightforward, Violet Leaf King, unlike that. What is his name called again? Yes, Water Leaf King. I had to speak until the point that my lips were about to crack before he was willing to take a single sip. He sure was a difficult person to deal with. Water Leaf King. Hearing those words right after putting his wine cup down, the Violet Leaf King's eyes narrowed in astonishment. His face immediately turned grim. Who are you? Previously, the guards had only addressed him as Elder Violet Leaf and not Violet Leaf King. And more importantly, the other party actually spoke about the Water Leaf King. It wasn't too long ago that his companion had been killed, and thinking back, it seemed like the guard that saved Elder Su from before had said that his companion was offered a cup of wine as well. Could there be some kind of link between the two? Sit down, sit down. There's no need to get too anxious over here. Worse come to worse, you will only be killed like the Water Leaf King. There is no need to make a huge fuss over something as small as this. Zhang Xian waved his hands nonchalantly as he continued pouring 2 more cups of wine for the both of them. Are you the one who killed the Water Leaf King? You are that 7-star master teacher. Upon coming to that realization, the eyes of the Violet Leaf King narrowed, and all of a sudden, he realized that his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. If the other party was capable of killing the Water Leaf King, it went without saying that the other party had the ability to kill him as well. How could he have been so negligent as to allow such a powerful expert to get into proximity to him without him noticing? 7-star master teacher. You still can't tell at this point. I was the one who saved Elder Su. With a look of displeasure, Zhang Xian began warping his muscles and bones, reverting back to the form of the guard from before. I will kill you. Overwhelmed by fury and craze, the Violet Leaf King roared furiously. He abruptly got to his feet and struck his palm at a downward trajectory towards Zhang Xian, intending to smash the other party into the ground. To think that they, members of the 10 great kings of the Qing Tian lineage, would end up being toyed by a human like that. The Violet Leaf King felt so angry that he could explode. Hi, youngsters nowadays sure don't know how to rein in their temper. Seeing that the other party had made a move against him, Zhang Xian shook his head sighed. In the next moment, the Violet Leaf King's face abruptly paled, and his body began trembling non-stop. Zhang Xian didn't even move a single finger throughout the entire duration, but the other party's knee had already caved in, leaving him kneeling on the floor as huge mouthfuls of blood spurted from his mouth. Contained within the cup of fine wine was his Heaven's Path Qinqi. After infiltrating into the Violet Leaf King's body, Zhang Xian could turn it into lethal poison at his whim. You poisoned me. Upon coming to a realization, the Violet Leaf King's body trembled non-stop with fear reflected in his eyes. Of course. If I don't poison you, do you think that a nascent saint like me will be able to defeat you? Voila! While speaking, he filled the 2 wine cups to the brim without spilling a droplet. Nascent saint. You are a nascent saint. The Violet Leaf King could hardly believe his ears. He could still resign himself to his defeat had the enemy been a 7-star master teacher, but a nascent saint cultivator actually managed to poison him. How could this be? Are you really unable to see through my cultivation? Zhang Xian shook his head. Nascent saint, then how can you possibly kill the Waterleaf King? I don't believe you. The Violet Leaf King shook his head vehemently and roared furiously. Even if the Waterleaf King had been poisoned, he was still a Saint 4 Dan expert. Considering that the Waterleaf King had gone to the extent of using their secret art to forcefully draw his primordial spirit from his body, it shouldn't have been difficult for him to kill the nascent saint fellow before his eyes. Even if that wasn't the case, the Waterleaf King should have been able to flee and alert him of the matter. How could he have been killed without letting out the slightest bit of news? There is no need to get anxious here. The Waterleaf King isn't the only one. I have also killed the Golden Leaf King and Green Leaf King as well, so this is really nothing to make a fuss over. Don't worry, I will have you reunite with the rest of them very soon. Lifting up a cup of wine, Zhang Xian sipped on it before saying nonchalantly. You. Pooh. The Violet Leaf King's body staggered weakly. It was for certain that the Waterleaf King had been killed, he had seen the corpse personally. Yet, for the Golden Leaf King and Green Leaf King to be dead as well, the Violet Leaf King nearly lost his sanity. Which of the Qingtian 10 great kings weren't famous figures who had made a name for themselves? Putting aside a small tier 1 empire like Hongyuan, not even Qingyuan conferred empire would dare to underestimate them. Massacring an entire city might still be beyond him at the moment, but he could definitely cause devastating damage, and there would be no humans that could stop them. To think that after the heavy price the otherworldly demonic tribe spent to send the 4 of them over, 3 of them had ended up dying without accomplishing anything at all. Could this really be true? The Violet Leaf King's eyes flickered with fear. He knew that since the other party was able to name his other comrades, there was a good chance that it was true. Not daring to remain there for a moment longer, the Violet Leaf King immediately turned around to flee. Golden Leaf, Green Leaf, and Water Leaf, none of these 3 kings were any weaker than him. Yet, they ended up being killed in that nascent saint cultivator's hands. The Violet Leaf King didn't feel that he would be an exception. In any case, it would be best for him to flee and rethink his next move. The current situation was simply not to his advantage. As for his poison, he should be able to find a way to deal with it eventually. Trying to flee? I have already set up a formation for you here. Don't you think it's a little impolite of you to leave like that? Shaking his head, Zhang Xian snapped his finger. In the next moment, the Violet Leaf King, who had just barely begun flying, felt a sharp pain coursing through his entire body, causing him to convulse uncontrollably. In the next moment, he plummeted from the sky and fell back onto the ground. If I can't get away, I will just have to bring you down with me. Feeling the lethal poison tear his body apart, the Violet Leaf King felt death slowly approaching him. Knowing that it was unlikely that he would be able to escape with his life today, he gritted his teeth in resolution and charged towards the middle-aged man before his eyes. Since he wasn't getting out of here alive, he decided to bring someone down with him. Why do all of you like to resort to suicide attacks? Zhang Xian shook his head. He had already dealt with a couple of the Qingtian 10 great kings, but all of them ended up resorting to a suicide attack. In the end, they really could use some creativity. You guys, go and dig out the pill in his mouth. After that, give him a good thrashing. With a flick of his wrist, 8 otherworldly demon puppets immediately appeared before his eyes before charging towards the Violet Leaf King. Those are otherworldly demons? No, they are puppets. Seeing the 8 figures charging towards him, the Violet Leaf King's body trembled. Shouldn't the privilege of being escorted by so many otherworldly demon puppets something that only otherworldly demon kings possessed? Am I the otherworldly demon king, or you are? Why does it feel like I am completely alone in this world? Not even having a single subordinate or ally, what a cruel life I am living. Chapter 992, The Violet Leaf King submits. The Violet Leaf King wasn't given much time to brood over his plight. Upon hearing the middle-aged man's command, the otherworldly demon puppets had already charged forward. If it had been before, against these Saint 3 Dan puppets, the Violet Leaf King would still have been able to stand his ground. However, plagued with lethal poison, he was barely able to fight at all. A few moments later, his entire face was filled with footprints, and his head had swollen up to the size of a ripe watermelon. Lying on the ground feebly, his breathing was weak, and it seemed like he would die at any moment soon. With the wine cup in his hand, Zhang Xian walked up gracefully and glanced down at the Violet Leaf King. Become my servant, and I can pardon you. With the experience from the previous kings, it was indeed unlikely for any of the otherworldly demon kings to submit to him. Nevertheless, it was still worth a try. Were he to succeed, he would have a Saint 4 Dan otherworldly demon serving him. If so, he would have more cards to play should he find himself in dire situations. At the same time, he could also learn of the secret plans that the otherworldly demonic tribe was up to. Why did they dispatch so many kings over to the Master Teacher continent? Why were they looking for the poison hall? You dream on. Hearing that request, the Violet Leaf King clenched his teeth furiously. To think that someone actually wanted to enslave a respected otherworldly demon king like him intolerable. Very well then. Zhang Xian turned his head around and commanded, continue beating him up. He didn't have the slightest shred of goodwill or pity for the otherworldly demonic tribe. If the other party was unwilling to submit to him, he would just have to kill the other party. Peng 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 peng. The otherworldly demon puppets launched yet another tirade of punches and kicks, and it didn't take long before the Violet Leaf King's face to turn completely pale. He was pummeled so badly that he couldn't even find the strength in him to talk. This time, Zhang Xian had learnt from his previous lesson. He had sealed the other party's acupoint to ensure that he would be unable to draw his primordial spirit out. This way, the other party wouldn't be able to pose any threat to him. After pummeling for a while longer, Zhang Xian noted that the Violet Leaf King was just a step away from death, so he had his puppets pause for a moment before instructing, Vicious, I will leave this fellow to you. You must uncover the motive behind the otherworldly demonic tribe seeking out the poison hall from him. Since Vicious seemed to have a way to deal with the otherworldly demon kings, Zhang Xian couldn't be bothered to conduct soul search. After all, the other party's strength was far stronger than him, and conducting a soul search forcefully could very well wound his soul. Don't worry, young master. Vicious reassured. In the next moment, a finger abruptly materialized in the air and tapped on the Violet Leaf King's glabella. This is the aura of an otherworldly demon emperor. Sensing the strength exerted by the finger, the Violet Leaf King suddenly felt a wave of helplessness. The finger before him emanated the aura that was exclusive to otherworldly demons, and the concentration of the killing intent emanated had most definitely reached the level of an otherworldly demon emperor. An otherworldly demon emperor actually acknowledged this young man as his master. Don't kill me. I am willing to acknowledge you as my master. The realization that an esteemed otherworldly demon emperor had taken the young man before him as his master seemed to have struck a chord within his mind, becoming the hammer which crushed the final shred of determination that he was firmly holding on to. All of a sudden, the idea of becoming the other party's servant didn't seem to be as big as a deal as death. He knew that he would be branded as a traitor for acknowledging a human as his master, and he could very well suffer a death worse than death were he to be caught. However, he had no other choice. If he were to reject it, he knew that he would suffer the same fate which befell the Golden Leaf, Green Leaf, and Waterleaf King. On the other hand, if he were to submit, he might still have a chance to survive. "You wish to take me as your master?" Zhang Xian was slightly taken aback. He didn't think that it was very likely to succeed, so he was surprised when the Violet Leaf King gave in. With a light chuckle, he nodded and said, "Offer your soul." If he wished to gain absolute control over the other party, he would have to grasp the other party's soul in his hand. "Yes." A bitter smile emerged on the Violet Leaf King's lips. Nevertheless, as one of the kings of the otherworldly demonic tribe, he had gone through many things in the past, allowing him to make crucial choices decisively. Since he had made his decision, he didn't hesitate for long before tearing a portion of his primordial spirit out and drew it out through his glabella to offer it to the young man before him. On the other hand, Zhang Xian took in the portion of the primordial spirit and absorbed it into his soul. In an instant, every single thought in the Violet Leaf King's mind became apparent to him. As long as the other party were to even raise the thought of betrayal, he would be able to kill the other party in the blink of an eye. What a powerful soul! Could it be that he isn't a poison master but a soul oracle? On the other hand, the Violet Leaf King was also astonished to sense the astounding strength which Zhang Xian's soul possessed. It was impossible for a nascent saint to possess such a powerful soul. The only plausible explanation was that he was a soul oracle. Just that, didn't the soul oracles go extinct long ago? How did his new master obtain their heritage and cultivate his soul to such a frightening level? And more importantly, wasn't he a poison master? Was he practicing the two occupations simultaneously? "Master, since I have already submitted to you, can you resolve the poison in my body now?" The Violet Leaf King had many doubts in his mind, but he knew that this wasn't the time to ask them. With a bitter look on his face, he kneeled onto the ground and kowtowed deeply as he said. He had taken a look at the poison in his body earlier, and he realized that he had never seen such a poison before. None of the antidotes he had in his possession seemed like it would work on it. "Don't worry. Since you have submitted to me, I won't mistreat you." Zhang Xian nodded. "Hong Long." In the next moment, the Violet Leaf King felt the lethal poison in his body working up once more. His face warped in horror, and he immediately started to plead for mercy. However, in the next moment, he realized that his wounds were beginning to recover under the nourishment of the lethal poison. This. The Violet Leaf King was dumbfounded. An incredibly potent poison which even he was helpless before had turned into an unparalleled saint recovery medicine in the blink of an eye. Poison in a thought, medicine in another, was the person before him an existence transcending a 7-star poison master? If that was really the case, that was really frightening. One must know that if a poison master of that caliber were to enter the otherworldly battlefield, the entire Qingtian lineage might very well be wiped off the face of the world. In the midst of his shock, the Violet Leaf King's wounds had already recovered to a fair extent. It wasn't a complete recovery, but at the very least, it wouldn't affect his basic movements. Nevertheless, to be able to recover that quickly, the Violet Leaf King was filled with awe and admiration for the young man before him. He kneeled to the floor and kowtowed once more, but this time, his feelings were earnest. "Master. Call me young master in the future." Zhang Xian waved his hand. "Since you have already submitted to me, I will tell you my true identity. In truth, I am a master teacher." "Am a master teacher?" Dumbstruck, the Violet Leaf King nearly fainted on the spot. He had guessed that the other party could be a poison master or a soul oracle, but the other party was actually telling him that he was a master teacher. When in the world did master teachers begin cultivating their souls and immersing themselves in the study of poison as well? And more importantly, weren't master teachers supposed to be upright and dignified figures who conducted themselves righteously and morally? When did they become so despicable and shameless, luring him into a scheme and doing him in so badly? Even if such a person was a master teacher, there was no way he could win the acknowledgement of his peers and the master teacher pavilion. Just as such thoughts emerged in his mind, the young man before him continued speaking nonchalantly. I am the principal of Hongyuan Empire's Master Teacher Academy. Pooh! Unable to hold himself back anymore, the Violet Leaf King spurted a mouthful of blood. As the passageway was linked to the subterranean gallery located in Hongyuan Empire, naturally, he understood the significance of being the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. He thought that the principal of a Master Teacher Academy should be a respected and austere old man. Yet, who could have thought that it would turn out to be a shameless and despicable young lad? Instead, more importantly, the other party was even skilled in the utilization of poison and soul arts, the very occupations scorned by the Master Teacher Pavilion. Was the Master Teacher Academy blind, or did the eras fly too quickly by for him to catch up with the latest trends? Alright, you should continue disguising yourself as a human. Unaware of the other party's thoughts, Zhang Xian instructed after he introduced himself. Due to being pummeled by his otherworldly demon puppets, the Violet Leaf King inadvertently released his disguise due to the severe injuries he suffered, reverting back to his original form as an otherworldly demon. It was fortunate that they were within a grade 7 beguilement formation, so no one was able to see what was going on here. However, if the Violet Leaf King were to walk out in such a form, it would indubitably cause a huge pandemonium. To be safe, it would be better for him to maintain his human disguise instead. Yes. The Violet Leaf King nodded before reaching his hand for his chest. A brilliant flash of light shrouded his entire body, and a moment later, he reverted back to his human form. You depend on this to disguise yourself. Noting the other party's actions, Zhang Xian was intrigued. Unlike him, the other party didn't depend on warping his muscles and bones to disguise himself. Instead, he made use of some kind of unique artifact. This is a button of disguise which we obtained from offering a tribute to our spirit god. As long as one possesses bloodline on par with an otherworldly demon king, he would be able to activate it and disguise himself impeccably as a human, such that even master teachers wouldn't be able to tell the difference, the Violet Leaf King replied. Spirit god? Noting the unfamiliar term, Zhang Xian asked with a frown. This was his first time hearing of such a being. Yes, the spirit god is a deity which our tribesmen worship. It is under the guidance of the spirit god that we came here, the Violet Leaf King replied. You are saying that it is under the guidance of your god that you found the Master Teacher continent? All along, Zhang Xian thought that the reason why the otherworldly demon was invading the Master Teacher continent was due to a racial strife. However, from the looks of it now, the matter seemed to be deeply related with the spirit god the other party spoke about instead. Yes, I also only heard of it from the Qingtian Emperor. However, those are matters which have happened ages ago, so there is no way to assess whether they are true or not. However, it is indeed true that we can earn generous rewards by tributing the souls and corpses of master teachers to the spirit god, and this button of disguise was obtained through that method as well, the Violet Leaf King explained. Zhang Xian nodded. He knew that these matters were still too far away from him, so there was no point brooding over it, especially since the Violet Leaf King weren't too sure about them himself either. Thus, he decided to put the matter aside for the moment and continued his interrogation. Why are you all looking for the poison hall? If the goal of the otherworldly demonic tribe was to devastate the human race, they could have just attacked the Hongyuan Empire straight. Why would they bother sending out 2 kings and go through so much effort to find the poison hall? Reporting to young master, we have found an ancient domain which might very well contain an artifact that can help us to break open the seal in the passageway. If we are able to obtain it, our tribesmen will be able to enter the master-teacher continent in droves and reclaim the land which we have lost, the Violet Leaf King explained. However, that ancient domain is simply too dangerous. A few kings which we have dispatched previously ended up being trapped within it, unable to escape even to date. After some investigation, we found out that there is a high chance that the poison hall may contain a detailed map of the ancient domain. Thus, Qing Tian Emperor dispatched the both of us here to infiltrate the poison hall and secure the map. Map? Ancient domain? Zhang Xian frowned. Looking deeply into the Violet Leaf King's eyes, he asked, "Could the ancient domain you spoke of be at Firesource City?" The old principal had also been trying to uncover the location of the poison hall before he entered the ancient domain. Considering the words that the Violet Leaf King had just spoken, could the ancient domain in the other party's mouth be the same one as he was thinking about? It is indeed in Firesource City, the Violet Leaf King nodded. The Violet Leaf King instinctively wanted to ask how did his young master know about it, but recalling that the other party was the principal of a master-teacher academy, he immediately came to a realization. If the top brass of mankind didn't even have the sources to acquire such crucial news, the otherworldly demonic tribe would have long breached the defenses of humanity and conquered the master-teacher continent. They wouldn't have been trapped in that wretched land to date. I see. Upon hearing the other party's confirmation, Zhang Xian nodded in realization. If it was an artifact that could break the seal in the subterranean gallery open, that would explain why the old principal would head into the ancient domain despite knowing that it was very likely he would not be walking out of there alive. If the otherworldly demonic tribe were to successfully acquire that artifact, it would spell a huge calamity to mankind. Chapter 993, Heading to the Poison Hall. After asking for a while longer, it seemed like the Violet Leaf King didn't know anything much about the ancient domain in the Firesource City either. Seeing that it was impossible to obtain any more useful information from him, Zhang Xian shook his head. At this point, Vicious had also managed to procure information out of the Waterleaf King's primordial spirit, and the result was similar to what he had received from the Violet Leaf King as well. They were only aware of the existence of the map, and everything other than them was vague. It was said that when the ancient domain first appeared 2,000 years ago, many powers had attempted to vie over the possession of the map. Eventually, it fell into the hands of the Poison Hall. However, for some reason, the Poison Hall didn't dispatch anyone to search for it. On top of that, the Poison Hall had always been secluded from the rest of the world, so it didn't take long before the news regarding the map to fade from the minds of the world. It was only through a very thorough investigation did the otherworldly demonic tribe learn of its existence. After much preparation, they finally found a perfect opportunity to dispatch 2 of their kings out to search for the map. However, who could have thought that the 2 powerful kings they sent would end up being done in by Zhang Xian before they could even catch a glimpse of the Poison Hall? What about the Golden Leaf King and Green Leaf King? What is their motive? The motive of the Waterleaf King and Violet Leaf King for coming to Jingyuan City was to procure the map, so naturally, the Golden Leaf King and Green Leaf King had to be up to something as well. It was just that they were already killed before they could achieve anything, so up to this point, Zhang Xian still had no idea what they were planning to do. Their motive is to kill the principal of the Master-Teacher Academy, that is to say you, young master. They hope to create chaos that can divert the attention of the Master-Teacher Pavilion away from everything else. The face of the Violet Leaf King reddened as he spoke. Kill me? Zhang Xian was taken aback. He never expected that the goal of the Golden Leaf King and Green Leaf King was to deal with him. It was fortunate that he found them early, or else, if he were to find himself challenged by 2 Saint Four Dan experts out of the blue, there was a good chance that he might have just died then. He could already imagine what would happen if the 2 kings and the 200 or so Saint Realm otherworldly demons were to appear at Hongyuan City. It would definitely stir up a huge mess, and even the Qingyuan conferred Empire Master-Teacher Pavilion would be embroiled into the conflict. By then, there would be no one paying attention to the ancient domain, allowing the otherworldly demon to sneak the artifact away easily. Looking at the surprise on his young master's face, the Violet Leaf King couldn't help but shake his head lamentably. The Golden Leaf King and Green Leaf King sure had died pitifully. They were dispatched to kill the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, only to end up being killed by their own target. On top of that, it turned out that their target didn't know anything about it at all. How indignant they would be if they were to learn of it in the afterlife. It seems like their deaths aren't unwarranted. Zhang Xian remarked meaningfully. What goes around comes around. Those otherworldly demons in the subterranean gallery were planning to kill him, only to end up being killed by him instead. I have a folded space. You should enter it for the time being. After asking all of the questions plaguing his mind, Zhang Xian ushered the Violet Leaf King into the myriad anthive nest. It took him a lot of effort before he could convince Elder Su that he was a poison master. If the other party were to see him together with the Violet Leaf King at this moment, the trust which he had cultivated painstakingly would shatter immediately, rendering his previous efforts futile. Thus, it was best for the Violet Leaf King to remain hidden for the time being. After keeping the Violet Leaf King into the myriad anthive nest, Zhang Xian tore away the grade 7 beguilement formation. At that point, Hu Yunsheng and the others hadn't gone far yet. He instructed for Hu Yunsheng to mobilize the troops of Incloud Quarter to take down the guards before writing a letter and arranging for it to be sent to Hongyuan City and its Master Teacher Pavilion. The collusion between the city lord of Jingyuan City with the otherworldly demonic tribe was a matter for Yu Shenqing to frustrate over. It was the other party's call how he would deal with the traitor. Nevertheless, one thing was for sure. As long as this letter was sent into Yu Shenqing's hands, that arrogant city lord would become a thing of history. Returning back to the chamber, Zhang Xian noted that Elder Su's wounds had mostly recuperated. His condition was much better than before, but his face was still ghastly pale due to the immense damage his soul had sustained earlier. A thought surfaced in Zhang Xian's mind, and he swiftly took out a beetle before passing it over. I went to the City Lord Manor just a moment ago and retrieved this for you. The beetle was Elder Su's life-bound venomous bug, and he had been feeding it with his blood essence for many years. It would be a huge loss to Elder Su if he were to lose it, so Zhang Xian had the Violet Leaf King hand it over after the latter submitted to him. Thinking back, it seemed like the beetle was also the reason why the Violet Leaf King was able to trace them down to Incloud Quarter so quickly. Otherwise, considering the huge size of Jingyuan City, there was no reason why they should conduct a search on Incloud Quarter first. Upon seeing the beetle, a look of agitation surfaced on Elder Su's face. He hurriedly took the beetle and replied, "Thank you." This was his life-bound venomous bug. If it were to die, he would definitely sustain heavy damage. He thought that it would be impossible for him to retrieve it after it fell into the hands of the Saint Four Dan expert. Yet, who could have thought that the man before him would actually risk his life to retrieve it for him? He couldn't help but feel touched by this gesture. "Are you injured anywhere?" Keeping the beetle, Elder Su asked with a concerned tone. He had witnessed with his own eyes how fearsome that Saint Four Dan expert was. To steal something from the other party's grasp was a deed so difficult that he could hardly fathom it. "Rest assured, I am fine," Zhang Xian said with a gentle smile when his face abruptly paled, and his body staggered. Spurting a mouthful of fresh blood, Zhang Xian's body suddenly slumped weakly to the ground, as if having succumbed to the severe injuries it had sustained. "Ah! Are you fine?" Alarmed, Elder Su hurriedly rushed forward to help Zhang Xian. Deep worry could be seen arched in his brows. To actually put himself in danger to retrieve his beetle, how could he ever thank the other party for this? More importantly, the other party even claimed that he was uninjured despite having sustained severe injuries for fear that he would worry this was exactly the type of person which one should befriend and entrust one's back to. Elder Su quickly took out a few recovery poison pills and fed it to Zhang Xian. Seeing the latter's complexion gradually recovering, he heaved a sigh of relief. It isn't safe to remain here. We should leave quickly. After recuperating for a moment, Zhang Xian exhaled deeply and said. Elder Su nodded in agreement. Had the other party not gone to retrieve his beetle, that Saint Four Dan expert might have thought that the both of them had already escaped far and thin his forces to comb the surroundings. But now the other party definitely knew that they were still at Jingyuan City. With their search area reduced, there was a good chance that they could be found very soon. How do you feel at the moment? Do you still need to rest for a while longer? Elder Su asked worriedly. While escaping was important, he couldn't allow the other party's injuries to worsen because of it. Otherwise, he would feel guilty for his entire life. It's fine, my injuries are still within a tolerable range. Let's quickly leave this area first. I can slowly recuperate once we reach the poison hall. Clutching his chest, Zhang Xian spoke strenuously. All right then. Let's prepare to set forth. The both of them swiftly planned their route before discreetly making their way out of the chamber. They proceeded stealthily towards the city walls, and not too long later, they managed to make their way out of the city gates. They stepped into the forest just beyond the city wall and descended into a mountainous valley. Soon after, a massive saint beast appeared before their eyes. This is the saint beast of our poison hall. Elder Shui and I rode this when we came here earlier. Speaking up to this point, Elder Su fell silent for a brief moment as sorrow surfaced in his eyes. The Elder Shui whom he spoke of was the shorter fellow who was with him back in the City Lord Manor. In order to save him, the other party had stepped forward to face the Violet Leaf King's palm strike, resulting in his immediate death. Elder Shui gave his life to save you. The best way you can repay his sentiments is to return to the poison hall safely. Zhang Xian consoled. Understanding that Zhang Xian was trying to console him, Elder Su nodded and fell silent. The duo got on the Saint Beast and began making their way towards the Viridian Cloud Sea. The Viridian Cloud Sea was the largest inland sea of Hongyuan Empire, spanning a diameter exceeding 100,000 kilometers. There were many powerful saint beasts whose cultivation reached Saint 3 Dan or 4 Dan within the sea, making it an extremely dangerous area to explore. As a result, it had always been considered as one of the restricted lands to the cultivators. The saint beast they were riding on was a Saint 1 Dan intermediate stage steel-armored winged dragon. It wasn't particularly adept at speedy maneuvers, but its stamina was top-notch. After flying for half a day, they finally caught sight of the boundless sea. Staring into the distance, the beautiful blue sky and the emerald seawater seemed to close in on one another, creating a breathtaking painting which harmonized the beauty of heaven and earth as one. Gazing upon it at extended periods of time would widen one's mind, granting one greater composure and a stronger disposition. There are a total of 27 poison formations on the pathway to the poison hall. Even a Saint 3 Dan cultivator could be easily poisoned to death if he were to attempt to infiltrate the poison hall recklessly. Within the wooden hut on top of the aerial Saint Beast, Elder Su gazed down at the emerald seawater beneath and remarked. 27 poison formations? Zhang Xian was astonished. Indeed. Furthermore, the poisonous formations are located around the dens of the Saint 3 Dan Saint Beasts. Thus, if one were to attempt to avoid the poison formation, one would come under their attack instead. As such, most of the cultivators who sought the poison hall ended up dying on the journey there. Even by conservative estimates, there are at least several hundred casualties each year. At this point, Elder Su shook his head. Several hundred casualties each year. Zhang Xian was astonished. Those who dared to venture into the Viridian Cloud Sea to search for the poison hall were bound to be not too weak themselves, reaching Saint Realm at the minimum. Yet, there were actually a few hundred deaths of experts of such calibers each year. While this wasn't the direct doing of the poison masters, it was intricately tied to them. It was no wonder the occupation was feared throughout the continent, it was indeed a powerful force that one should be careful around. But considering how deeply hidden the poison hall is, how does it sustain its heritage? Zhang Xian asked with a deep frown. Every occupation needed influxes of new blood to pass down its heritage, but considering how deeply hidden the poison hall was, most people wouldn't even be able to find it. Given so, how could they pass down their wisdom to the next generation? Poison masters would usually venture into the world in search of talented individuals to take under their wing. There are also some who would adopt a lot of orphans and expose them to lethal poison from young, and only those who survive at the end of it are qualified to acknowledge the poison master as their teacher. Elder Su explained. Zhang Xian frowned. That was a method similar to raising goo, placing all of the venomous insects together, allowing them to fight it out. Eventually, the final survivor was the victor. As orphans, they were bound to have no experience with poison whatsoever. Exposing them to it abruptly was bound to give rise to casualties. How many lives would have to be lost in order to nurture just a handful of poison masters? Given that you didn't come from any particular lineage, how did you become a poison master? After explaining the matter, Elder Su turned to look at Zhang Xian and asked doubtfully. Even those who had inherited the lineage of a poison master was unable to achieve such high resistance to poison. On the other hand, the man before him had never been to the poison hall, and yet, he had achieved a feat which most poison masters were unable to accomplish. Just how did he do so? Actually, I have been to a poison hall before, but it isn't this one. It is a branch located in a remote location under Xianyuan Kingdom called the Red Lotus Mountain Ridge. After I left the area, I began exploring the world, and by a stroke of coincidence, I happened to obtain a secret manual regarding the way of poison. Studying it carefully, I eventually became who I am today. Zhang Xian casually replied. If he were to say that he had never come into contact with poison masters and yet achieved such mastery in the way of poison, the story would be too inconceivable for anyone to believe. Thus, he mixed truth and falsehood within the words, making it difficult for the other party to discern the authenticity of it. A secret manual regarding the way of poison? To be able to grant you such astounding capability, it must be a rather powerful secret manual. Elder Su complimented before turning his gaze towards Zhang Xian. Will it be convenient for you to allow me to look at the secret manual you spoke of? Rest assured, I won't open it. I am just curious to see which master did the book come from. This. Zhang Xian's lips twitched. He was just making things up on the spot, so how could he have any secret manual of that sort? But for the other party to be asking such a question, could it be that the other party still harbored doubts regarding his identity? Chapter 994, The Poison Master Examination. It's fine if it isn't convenient for you. Noticing the look of distress on the other party's face, Elder Su shook his head. It is not that it is inconvenient, but that it isn't my place to be spreading the heritage around. How about this? Why don't I detail the 1-star and 2-star fundamental knowledge to you instead so that you can fathom the origin of the secret manual through it? Seeing that the other party was just posing it as a casual question and not to investigate his origins, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't have the secret manual, and his knowledge of poison was still capped at 2-star. The only reason why he seemed fearsome in the eyes of the other party was due to his Heaven's Path Shinchi, which granted him a near-complete immunity to poisons. As such, he could be considered to be an amateur to poison. Nevertheless, if it was just fundamental knowledge of 2-star and below, he was confident that there was no one who could rival him. That would be great. Elder Su's eyes lit up. Lineage was extremely important in the master-teacher continent, so it was indeed inconvenient for the other party to expose his heritage to an outsider. It was understandable why the other party was unwilling to speak any more about that. As for knowledge of 2-star and below, as it involved only the fundamental knowledge of poison, there was no harm to sharing them. Based on the explanation of the book, poison can be viewed as a medicine of one kind as well. To put it simply, it is used to complement the yin-yang and 5 elements of the human body. As long as one achieves a balance in the 5 elements, one will be able to develop an immunity to all poisons. Recalling the 1-star and 2-star Heaven's Path poison art, Zhang Xian began to speak. This. Elder Su initially thought that there couldn't possibly be anything new to the fundamentals, but as he listened on, his face gradually warped in astonishment. Gripped by agitation, his entire body began trembling, and his breathing hastened. The other party had reshaped the understanding of poison through the concept of yin-yang and the 5 elements, and through it, he was able to theorize the concept of poison immunity. It was possible to poison a person to death, but was it possible to poison the heavens to death? The fundamental knowledge that the other party spoke of was directed towards the very essence of poison itself. As long as one were to cultivate according to it, it was almost certain that one would be able to forge the poison body. Even though it was already too late for him to switch his cultivation technique, he could already foresee the huge uproar it would cause in the poison hall should this piece of knowledge ever be made public. Poison can be a tonic as well. It can save and can treat. As long as one were to use it well, it can definitely become a valuable tool to the world. Zhang Xian continued speaking. The more he listened, the deeper a trance Elder Su found himself falling into. The main reason why poison masters were so widely feared was due to their ability to plant poison discreetly, making it extremely difficult for an average cultivator to guard against them. However, if their poison really could make a positive contribution to the world, just like what the other party had said, it might be possible for the poison hall to walk out of its isolation and stand openly on the master-teacher continent once more. They could come under the protection of the master-teacher pavilion, and they wouldn't be shunned and snubbed by the world as they were now. With such thoughts in mind, Elder Su subconsciously turned to look at Sun Chang with a look of agitation on his face. All right, this is all I have understood from it. After casually sharing some of the knowledge of poison that he possessed, Zhang Xian finally came to a halt. Lifting his gaze, he noticed that Elder Su was looking at him with a fiery gaze. Alarmed, he quickly glanced downward at his clothes, but nothing was open. If nothing is open, what are you getting agitated over? It can't be that your sexual orientation has changed from listening to a lecture. It doesn't seem like there is any master teacher in the world who possesses such an ability. Cough cough. Noticing Zhang Xian's actions, Elder Su knew that he had acted inappropriately for a moment there. He adjusted his expression before continuing with a grim look. Poison Master's son, the secret manual that you have is simply too astounding. It will be best for you to keep its existence hidden from the others, or else, I fear that you might meet with danger. Which poison master didn't dream of a body that boasted a high resistance to poison? Which poison master didn't hope to concoct an even more potent poison? If the other poison masters were to learn that the man before him had such a formidable secret manual in his possession, they surely wouldn't hesitate to resort to all kinds of underhanded means to obtain it, thus putting the other party in grave danger. Zhang Xian nodded in agreement. Unlike master teachers, poison masters had no regards for rules and morals. If they were to learn of the existence of the secret manual, they might even attempt to snatch it in broad daylight. Nevertheless, Zhang Xian had no fear. The main reason why he wanted to head to the poison hall was to collect books regarding poison and save Wei Ruyan. If the poison masters knew that was best for them, he could still consider getting along with them. Otherwise, he didn't mind teaching the other party the meaning of fear. After a moment of hesitation, Elder Su added, "You should conceal your poison-resistant constitution as well. Make sure not to show it to anyone easily. Otherwise, you might be stoking their greed." Zhang Xian nodded. While he didn't possess the innate poison body, his ability to neutralize most poisons was indeed something that would interest most poison masters, if not all. Others could very well go after him in hopes of uncovering his secrets and cultivating the same poison-resistant constitution for themselves. For this reason, it would be best for him to maintain a low profile at the poison hall. In any case, this happened to work in his favor. He was a humble person at heart, and he never liked to boast to others anyway. "I intend to take the Poison Master examination later on at the Poison Hall, but I'm not too sure how it is conducted there. Can you shed some light on the matter for me? Also, will I be able to access all of the books in the poison hall if I were to clear the examination? After chatting for a while longer, Zhang Xian asked. His main goal at the poison hall was to collect all of the books on poison there, so naturally, that was also the matter that he was the most concerned about. The poison master examination at our branch is slightly different from that of the others. Rather than the typical concoction of poison, the crux of our examination lies in poisoning. Elder Su said. Poisoning? Zhang Xian was perplexed. Indeed. The ability to concoct potent poison is formidable, but what that makes a truly great poison master is his ability to poison a person whose cultivation realm is equal or even greater than him discreetly. Elder Su explained. Are you saying that the poison master examination will come in the form of a poisoning match? That's right. For the 6-star poison master examination, the examinee will be challenging a 6-star poison master. The examiner would be fighting with his full strength as well, and if the examinee is able to wound the examiner through his poison, he would be considered to have cleared the examination. Elder Su explained. But poison, it shouldn't be easy to control it in combat, right? What will happen if one side accidentally poisons the other to death? Zhang Xian frowned in bewilderment. Precise control was required to wound an opponent without dealing lethal damage, and this was something extremely difficult to control in combat. Use too little poison, and it might end up being ineffective. Use too much, and one could accidentally kill one's opponent. Given so, wasn't it a little too risky to conduct such an examination? If one were to be poisoned to death in the midst of the examination, it can only mean that he hasn't worked hard enough in his studies. He has no one but himself to blame. Elder Su shook his head and sighed. This is simply how things work here. Not expecting that the poison master examination would be so risky, Zhang Xian shook his head helplessly. A moment later, he asked, May I trouble Elder Su to fill me in on the situation in the Hongyuan Empire Poison Hall? At the current moment, he knew nothing about the poison hall at all. If he could learn a thing or two about it, he would be more well prepared for whatever he would face there. Of course, that's nothing much to ask of. Elder Su chuckled. The Hongyuan Empire Poison Hall branch is, in fact, a grade 7 branch. We have a 7-star poison master as our hall master, and this means that it is possible to take the 7-star poison master examination at our branch. If one can defeat the hall master in a poison match, one will be qualified to become a 7-star poison master immediately. Other than the hall master, the poison hall also has 3 7-star vice hall master, as well as 22 6-star pinnacle elders. Elder Shua and I are amongst the 22 6-star pinnacle elders. As for poison masters below 6-star, there should be at least several dozen thousand of them. Several dozen thousand? Zhang Xian was stunned. The utilization of poison could be considered to be an unorthodox art, so he thought that there wouldn't be too many poison masters in the world. Yet, who could have thought that just this single branch would have numbers nearly on par with the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy? It was fortunate that they had chosen to isolate themselves at Jinyuan City. Otherwise, their presence could easily bring unease or even chaos upon the entire Hongyuan Empire. The Poison Hall is known for its 3 great halls. The first hall is the Compendium Hall, which boasts a huge collection of books accumulated over the past 10,000 years. Most who wish to advance as a poison master would devote most of their time to studying the books in there. The second hall is the Poison Experimentation Hall. Researching and practicing the concoction of poison requires a vast amount of medicinal herbs. If one were to work with real herbs each time, even a mountain of medicinal herbs could be easily depleted within days. Within the Poison Experimentation Hall is a unique formation which could accurately simulate the unique properties of each medicinal herb. Through experimenting with the herbs here, one could lessen the wastage of herbs. The last one is the Sparring Hall. Just like with most other occupations, poison masters who have an irreconcilable conflict with one another would head there and settle it through a life-and-death duel. While it was named the Sparring Hall, it was also the location where many poison masters had died. Elder Su shook his head. Other than the 3 great halls, there is also the 2 forbidden grounds. One of them is the Mausoleum of Hall Masters. It is the location where the Hall Masters of every generation rested. Only the incumbent Hall Master was allowed to enter the grounds, and anyone else who tried to circumvent the rule would find themselves being poisoned to death. The other forbidden ground is the herb fields. Planted in the fields are the medicinal herbs used in the poison hall, and they are strictly controlled. Anyone who needs any medicinal herb must apply for it beforehand. No one was allowed to enter it casually, or else death would be what they would face. Other than that, there is nothing else. Given your strength and your immunity to poison, there should be nothing for you to worry about. Zhang Xian nodded. 7-star poison master, 3 great halls, and the 2 forbidden grounds. Since he was intending to only go through the books of the poison hall, he would probably only pay a visit to the compendium hall and go nowhere else. Actually, the poison hall isn't as frightening as others put it out to be. As fellow poison masters, everyone actually treats one another rather amiably, not to mention, you are my savior on top of that. Elder Su said with a kind smile. The poison hall might seem like an incomparably frightening existence in the eyes of others, but internally, they still got along with one another harmoniously. While fellow friends might occasionally spike each other's drinks or something, they would usually prepare the antidote beforehand, so no permanent harm would be done. Zhang Xian continued asking on several matters concerning the poison hall, and Elder Su, seemingly convinced that he was a real poison master, didn't hide anything from him at all. Half a day later, Zhang Xian finally gained a deep insight into the Hongyuan Empire Poison Hall. While it was located within the territory of Hongyuan Empire, it was in truth the largest and most formidable poison hall in Qingyuan conferred empire. This was also the reason why there were multiple 7-star poison masters holding the fort there. The poison hall was also a really dangerous place for the average cultivator. Not only were there poison masters and poisonous herbs, there were even poisonous worms, poisonous plants, and even the drinking water itself was poisoned. Had it been anyone else, Elder Su would have surely made sure to warn them sternly beforehand. However, the man before him was no average cultivator. He was an existence who could munch on grade 6 pinnacle poisons as if they were mere snacks. In any case, he was certain that the other party couldn't possibly be poisoned to death, so there was nothing to warn him about. All right, we are arriving at the poison hall. After flying for 2 days straight, Elder Su abruptly stood up and pointed forward. Turning his gaze over as well, Zhang Xian saw the boundless blue ocean with a brilliant sun hanging at the horizon. In the next moment, the saint beast twisted its body slightly, and the sight before him cleared up. A massive island abruptly came into sight. To Zhang Xian's astonishment, the island was actually concealed by a massive hidden formation. Had it not been for Elder Su leading him here, it was very likely that he might have never found the poison hall. Chapter 995, Hongyuan Empire Poison Hall. The island had a diameter of around 100 kilometers. From afar, Zhang Xian could see that it was filled with all kinds of towering plants, granting it a lush appearance. Surrounded by a massive formation, the spiritual energy within was particularly concentrated, and from time to time, one could see formidable saint beasts dancing in the air above. To be able to conceal an island with a diameter of 100 kilometers, the man who set up the formation must be at least a 7-star formation master. Zhang Xian noted in astonishment. He was currently a 6-star pinnacle formation master, but even so, a formation of such scale was still far beyond his means. Just how powerful must the senior who had built the poison hall here be? The founder of the Hongyuan Empire Poison Hall wasn't only a 7-star poison master, he was a 7-star pinnacle formation master as well. Even so, he had still spent an entire 50 years to construct this massive hidden formation. Noticing Zhang Xian's shock, Elder Su explained with a smile. 50 years? Zhang Xian's lips twitched in astonishment. Not even a single year had passed since his transcension until now. To spend an entire 50 years just to construct a formation, this was something that Zhang Xian would never do. That's right. This formation taps on the volcano beneath it as its energy source, concealing the entire island amidst the vast sea. If one couldn't locate the proper entrance, all one would see was just yet another plot of empty sea while flying over it. Elder Su said proudly. Over the years, many 7-star master teachers and formation masters had flew across this land, but none of them had noticed the poison hall here. It is due to this that the poison hall was able to retain its complete heritage even after 10,000 years, never having suffered an attack before. Incredible. Zhang Xian nodded. Activating his eye of insight, he assessed the formation before him. He had to admit that the design of the formation was indeed exquisite. The hidden formation was constructed through making use of the unique geographical advantage of the island, making it perfectly harmonized with its surroundings. Even via his eye of insight, he could barely make out the existence of the formation. It would be hard for him to decipher the formation within a short period of time. If he really wanted to break the formation, it would take him around 10 minutes. A formation that would take him so long to decipher could already be considered to be extremely powerful. Let's head down. Noticing the stunned look in Zhang Xian's eyes, Elder Su chuckled as he drove the aerial Saint Beast down upon the island. Around 10 minutes later, they landed on a massive elevated platform. Elder Su. A few youngsters rushed up to welcome the returning Elder Su. However, when they saw that it was a middle-aged man whom they had never seen before instead of Elder Shui who walked out of the wooden hut, they were bewildered for a moment. Poison Master's son here is my savior. Prepare an accommodation for him. Elder Su instructed. I will be seeking an audience with the Hall Master now. Yes. Hearing that the other party was Elder Su's savior, a gleam of admiration surfaced in the eyes of the youngsters as they nodded hurriedly. Poison Master's son, they will lead you to your accommodation to rest. I need to meet the Hall Master first to report the happenings earlier at Jingyuan City to him. After which, Elder Su took 2 steps forward before halting once more. Without turning his head around, he sent a telepathic message to Zhang Xian. The members of the Poison Hall could have a rather bad temper. However, they do admire the strong, so there is no need for you to hold back should anyone attempt to provoke you. Got it. Zhang Xian nodded. Considering that one of the elders of the Poison Hall was killed, this matter should indeed be reported to the Hall Master as soon as possible. And it went without saying that he had no intentions to be a Samaritan should anyone try to step over his head too. I will report your matter to the Hall Master as well and apply a slot in the Poison Master examination for you. Elder Su added before hurriedly heading off. A moment later, he had already disappeared in the distance. Poison Master's son, this way please. Seeing that Elder Su had left, the youngsters stepped forward and gestured to Zhang Xian. Without wasting a word, Zhang Xian followed behind them. Shortly after leaving the elevated platform, a massive town unfolded before his eyes. Innumerable buildings of differing heights could be seen here and there. However, the architecture was rather ancient, seemingly having thousands of years to them. A bustling crowd moved to and fro the streets, doing everything that one could think of. In a sense, it was truly no different from a huge city. Walking amongst the crowd, Zhang Xian could occasionally see a light mist drifting out from the cracks in the windows and doors of several houses. It had a pleasant smell to it, but it seemed to fill one with lethargy, inducing one to a deep sleep. There was no doubt about it, the mist definitely contained poison. That wasn't the only peculiarity that Zhang Xian noticed. From time to time, he would see poisonous bugs and snakes with bright, glistening colors glaring at the passers-by with a menacing gaze, seemingly ready to strike at any moment. The faint-hearted would probably be frightened unconscious on the spot upon seeing this sight. Don't worry, these poisonous snakes don't bite easily. As if noting the apprehension on Zhang Xian's face, one of the young men explained with a smile. At that moment, however, a scream of agony suddenly sounded in front. A middle-aged man was running forward frenziedly, and taking a closer look, there was a poisonous snake hanging off his bottom. Its sharp fangs were sunk deep into the middle-aged man's flesh, refusing to let go no matter how forcefully the other party struggled. "Screw this shit, whose snake is this? If no one dares to own up, I will skin this bastard alive today." Soon after, another bellow sounded from the crowd, "Try to eat my snake, and I will have you poisoned to death right here right now." A figure flitted out from the crowd and began crossing hands with the middle-aged man who was bitten by the snake. It's just a coincidence. These poisonous snakes and bugs are usually rather friendly. Meeting with this sight right after saying that the poisonous snakes wouldn't bite, the young man scratched his head in embarrassment. He hurriedly tried to reassure the guest who he was escorting, even though these bugs might attack one another from time to time, there is no need to worry. We, Poison Masters, are a harmonious community. We respect one another and promote neighborliness, so rarely will there be any fights breaking out. Zhang Xian nodded. However, before they could take another step forward, an even louder scream sounded. "Which screwed-up bugger poisoned my pillow? You better pray that I don't find out who you are, because you can be heck sure that I will skin you alive when I do." Right afterward, a young lady with a round face darted out from one of the doors. The young lady had a beautiful figure, but her face was swollen as though a watermelon. There were even quite a few parts which had pus flowing out. Her appearance was truly as hideous as a zombie who had climbed out from its grave. "Which idiot spiked my porridge? To dare to plant a poisonous bug in my shoes, you must be tired of living. Stuffing medicine in my nostrils? You must be asking me to chop off your hands." Such voices sounded relentlessly in the surroundings. Following which, one by one, victims whose appearances were disfigured in all kinds of ways rushed out from their rooms. The face of the young man who had just said that the Poison Masters promoted neighborliness reddened in awkwardness. Cough cough. "They are just jesting with one another, so you don't have to worry about that. They are just testing out the poisons that they have just concocted, so you can think of it more like a prank. It's really harmless actually." "Harmless? Then, that is." With a perplexed look, Zhang Xian pointed in a certain direction. There, two poison masters who were fighting intensely with one another, seemingly unwilling to rest until one side had fallen dead. The young man. After walking through the streets for a moment longer, Zhang Xian gained an understanding of the prevalent culture in the Poison Hall. Unlike the Master-Teacher Pavilion, the Poison Hall didn't have many rules. Whenever a poison master succeeded in formulating a new poison, they would usually try it on those around them. Appearances were something that commonly changed within this city. A person could look this way yesterday but assume a vastly different appearance tomorrow. In fact, there had even been cases where one's gender had changed due to the side effect of some poison. In other words, your neighbor could very well be an elderly man today, a middle-aged man tomorrow, a ravishing young lady the day after tomorrow, and perhaps even a monstrous behemoth the day after tomorrow. But of course, if you were to ask the other party's name, you would find out that they were all the same person all along. It was just due to the consumption of bizarre poisons that resulted in the continuous warping of his form. It's fortunate that they are all on this island. If the poison masters were to do the same in Hengyuan City, it will only be a matter of time before they are pummeled to death. Zhang Xian shook his head. It was probably only on this land could they do something as ridiculous as this. Hengyuan City had a Master-Teacher Pavilion and Master-Teacher Academy to uphold order, and willfully poisoning another in such a manner was against the rules. Should one be caught doing so, even 10 lives wouldn't be sufficient to amend for one's sin. How could Elder Su bring himself to say with a straight face that the Poison Masters were an amiable bunch when such was the chaos here to live in fear, not knowing who would poison one or who one would turn into the next day? This sure wasn't his definition of amiable. "Alright, Poison Master Sunday. This is your accommodation. After walking a while further and seeing bizarre acts of all kinds, the young man finally came to a halt. Taking a look at his accommodation, it was decently clean residence. While the building looked a little old, the surroundings were rather tranquil and peaceful. All right. Knowing that he wouldn't stay here for too long, there was no need for him to get picky about it. Just as Zhang Xian was about to push open the door to enter, a few young men suddenly walked over. Li Yuan, this person looks very unfamiliar. I don't think I have seen him around before. He is a guest whom Elder Su just brought in from outside. Li Yuan, the young man who had brought Zhang Xian over, replied. Elder Su brought him here. Could it be that he intends to take that person as his disciple? To be able to move that obstinate old fogey's heart, his talent must be spectacular. Let me see how capable he is. The other young man chuckled. He snapped his fingers, and a surge of smoke suddenly gushed in Zhang Xian's direction. Lu Su, don't mess around. Poison Master's son isn't Elder Su's disciple. Li Yuan explained. However, before he could finish his words, the smoke had already reached Zhang Xian, giving him no time to stop the latter at all. Just as he was about to exclaim for the middle-aged man before him to be careful, he suddenly noticed a hint of a smile from the corners of the latter's cheek. The next moment, his silhouette vanished like a phantom and materialized right before Lu Su. Pang! The crisp sound of bones shattering echoed resoundingly in the air. Before Lu Su could even cry in agony, he was already sent flying before eventually ending up being hung on the branch of a nearby tree, passed out. Ah! Everyone was dumbstruck. As fellow poison masters, if an individual were to be attacked by poison, he should retaliate in the same manner. Yet, this fellow actually sent the other party flying with a single punch. How violent! You as a poison master, how can you resolve matters with violence? Just how crass can you get? A young man behind Lu Su stepped forward and waved his hands righteously. I shall challenge you to a poison duel right now. Do you dare to Aki? But before he could finish his words, a foot was already planted in his face. Pang! Just like Lu Su, before the young man could utter a word, he was sent flying and eventually ended up being hung on a nearby tree branch as well. You! The faces of the remaining young men warped in fury. Their companion had already challenged the other party to a poison duel, but the other party still continued to attack them with brute force. Let's make a move together. One of the young men exclaimed. Peng 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 peng. A few breaths later, the energetic young men from a moment ago were lying unconscious on the tree not too far away. This. Li Yuan and the others who had escorted Zhang Xian over were flabbergasted. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.